the first time in this space. It's actually, for me, I'll speak for myself, it's kind of nice to be at ground level. I feel more like it's a conversation than up in the higher elevated stuff. I feel like I would be using that shallow and just kind of a conversation. And that really is how I feel about these conversations. It really is us trying to figure out what's going on, what we're trying to do, and then apply this to these folks. So you're too far off agenda, but nice to be here with you. One more thing off agenda, but I'm just going to keep coming back to it. A lot of times people say they can't keep up with all that's going on in the city, and there is a lot going on with the city right now. A lot of projects going on. Certainly, the website is a great place to find that information. But recently, I think just 2 months ago, the city added the Cannon Beach Community Bulletin, and that can also be found online. And if you don't like navigating the website, you only have to navigate it one time to sign up for the mailing list, and you'll get that bulletin. Has some really useful information about what's happening, like announcing construction starting on the police headquarters. I'm trying to think of what else I saw this month. Discussions about a couple of ballot measures. Those are certainly like the questions around that are out there from the common vote. So you just want to keep up on what's going on with the city. That's a great place to go. All right, now we'll get to the formal stuff here. I'll call our meeting to order. May I have an approval of our agenda this year? Move to approve. Okay, I'll take that as a second. Okay. Any further discussion about the agenda as we're set up? You said Ray Miller's going to be online.
Yeah.
Nothing first change on that. All right. Let's vote for the agenda. That's what we call a vote, please.
Commissioner Matusek.
Yes.
Commissioner Bates.
Yes.
Commissioner Sinclair.
Yes.
Commissioner Moore. Commissioner Moore. Yes. Commissioner Wade.
Yes.
Chair Newton.
Yes. Okay, we'll move to consideration of the minutes from our last meeting, March 27th. Are there any amendments to the minutes? If there are no amendments or no further discussion, may I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second. I got you on the wing here. I love it. Good. Right on. Thank you. Any further discussion? Tessa, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Wade.
Yes.
Commissioner Moore. Yes. Commissioner Bates.
Yes.
Commissioner Matusek.
If that was me, yes. It's hard to hear.
Commissioner Sinclair.
Yes.
Commissioner Orloff.
Yes.
Chair Newton.
Yes. Can we do a mic test really quick? Tessa, will you speak again? Commissioner Matusek, will you let us know if you can hear Tessa okay when she speaks?
Testing. Can you hear me?
Yeah, she's just going in and out. I mean, I can hear for the most part. It's just a couple words here and there are muddled.
Okay, got it. Well,
I don't think it's her. I think it's the room, but whatever. I'll be fine.
okay, we'll move on. I'll move to public comment. At this time, we'll take public comment. If you have something you'd like to share with us that you believe is within the purview of the planning commission, we'll offer you an opportunity to speak with us. We do ask that you limit to that testimony to 3 minutes. Is there anyone who'd like to speak under the public comment? Is there anyone online who'd like to speak? No? Okay, then we'll move on. We'll move to our action items. So we have a number of items here tonight. We could be here for a little while. We will take a few breaks. The restrooms are to your left, to our right. Probably after an hour and a half or so, we'll take a break. We have a couple quasi judicial hearings tonight. Inevitably, these are, this body serves as a quasi judicial body. We're making a ruling. Inevitably, someone loves a decision, and inevitably someone doesn't. If you don't agree with our decision, you have the right to appeal. Appeal this decision, our decision, to the city council. We're going to afford applicants the opportunity to make their case before us, if you will. We'll listen to that. We may have questions for the applicant or the applicant's representatives. We will ask if anyone's opposed to the project, and they may come forward and speak. the applicant or the representatives are then offered the opportunity to come back and rebut anything they've heard or offer any additional testimony if they have anything that they'd like to add, any they've heard on. Once we close the public record, we can take no more public testimony. So make sure you get in what you want, because it's closed not only with this body, but it's also closed to the city council and should go further than that. So that is also closed. We'll do our best to ask any questions we have that we think are pertinent to the decisions that you have afforded the opportunity to answer any concerns we have. Okay, let's jump into it. Our first item is a quasi-judicial hearing, continuation of CU 2501 Ray Miller for a conditional use permit for a residential build in a wetlands buffer area. CU 2501 Ray Miller, applicant for a conditional use permit for residential construction in an inventoried wetland buffer area. The project is located at 415 Chilkoot Trail Road, tax lot 117, map 51032 BB, and is in the residential lower density RL zoning district. The application will be reviewed against the criteria of the municipal code 17.102, wetland overlay zone, and 17.86 conditional use. Does anyone object to the jurisdiction of the planning commission to hear this matter at this time? Does any commission member believe he or she has a conflict of interest or personal bias? Has any commission member had any ex parte contacts or made a site visit? Yeah, made a site visit. And we actually, that question's been asked before, so. And we have, anything additional to the staff report?
No, there's no new additional information from the staff report. We have received 4 new exhibits, since the previous planning commission hearing. That includes a supplemental stormwater report, supplemental wetlands report, a supplemental engineering memo, and additional, plans. Those have all been distributed.
Is there any additional correspondence that's coming? Thanks.
No.
Great. I'm reminded that I did not check my phone. Make sure it's turned off if you all. Just make sure your phones are turned off. It'll keep us from awkward moments later, including the person who's supposed to know what they're doing. At this time, I'll call for public testimony. The pertinent criteria to be considered are noted in the staff reports and listed in the criteria sheets on the meeting page of the city's website. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed toward those criteria or other criteria in the comprehensive plan or municipal code which the person testifying believes apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal based on that issue. Persons who testify shall first receive recognition from the chair, state their full name and mailing address, and if appearing in a representative capacity, identify whom they represent. If an application, or excuse me, is there a presentation by the applicant? So I guess if there's no formal presentation by the applicant, we just consider what's been submitted. Are there? We then, the applicant is here. I'm not, I don't want to assume I know.
I think,
Sure.
I know the applicant's here, Ms. Miller. I'm not sure if she has other people that are also representing her, with some of the documentation. And I think there was some questions at the last meeting about the mitigation efforts and the landscaping and storm drainage. So I didn't know if we wanted, we could ask questions, or we could have those people that provided those documentation go through them. I don't know what's easier to ask them specific questions about what we've received, or to let them present the information.
I see a hand up by Ryan Sheehan.
Yep. Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Ryan Sheehan. I'm the civil engineer working with Ray. I'm just here to answer any questions anyone has and provide any insight.
May we have your address, please, Mr. Sheehan?
I'm sorry.
Your mailing address?
622 Southeast 18th Avenue, Portland, Oregon.
Perfect, thank you. And Anita has her hand up.
Yes, I'm Anita Kate Smith. I'm with Westbrook Science and Design. My address is 13700 Southwest Ascension Drive in Tigard, Oregon, and I prepared the wetland documentation.
Great. Is anyone else here on behalf of the applicant? Okay, so, by the fact, I've heard you both say you're open to questions, open for questions, but no presentations, by the applicant or any of the applicants represented. Is that fair for me to say?
Yes, that's fair. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Are there presentations by any proponent in favor of this conditional? Opening, okay. How about opponents? Are there opponents? Okay, we'll move back to the applicant and their team. This may seem a little redundant, but it is a procedure we have to follow. Anything you'd like to add before we move to, well, I think we should answer questions. I'm not going to close the record. I think that we should just offer the opportunity for the applicant and the applicant's representative to respond to any questions. Do any commission members have questions for the team that is represented for the applicant?
I have one comment. I noticed in the wetland litigation report, this is, page 6 of exhibit A9 or page 6 of the wetland science and design report, that it looks like you are suggesting herbicides be applied to limit invasives, but under our wetland code, it does say that herbicides are not to be used in wetland buffer areas. So I would be concerned about maintaining this section with herbicides, but I'd be interested to know why you felt herbicides would be necessary.
I considered using herbicides in this limited fashion because everyone in this area who's tried to control blackberry, it is difficult to control. But there are ways to mitigate the potential of that herbicide to cause problems. The ODOT's roadside management guide and other documentation, this is the type of guidance that we use when we have to do control within wetlands themselves, as well as adjacent sensitive areas. So it is an accepted use elsewhere. If the commission would prefer it not be done that way, that can be removed and it can be a hand removal, but recognizing that that is a less effective way of removing it quickly and leaving it to potentially regrow either from the seed bank or from pieces of root that would be left behind. So it's a discretionary piece of this. It can potentially be controlled, but it is less likely to be successful in the short term.
The question.
I have a question, actually for Mr. Chin. So I tried to go through I did go through your submittal. I think I was the one who expressed the concern about runoff, stormwater mitigation. It looks to me like, if I understand correctly, that the infiltration trench is designed to handle what would be considered a maximum event. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And I didn't understand at that time, but I do now that the trench is actually runs parallel to the planned parking area.
Yeah. I thought that was a good location to have it. It could receive and treat runoff from that parking area as well as the house.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I understood a lot of neat scientific stuff, but I didn't understand all of it. Thank you.
No problem.
Any other questions?
I actually had one more question.
Go ahead.
Ms. Miller, could you please clarify again? I think you said there were no tree removals, but there is one tree that appears very, very close to the parking area and structure. Could you clarify again, is that tree going to be removed or not?
No, there will be no tree removal.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Any final comments the applicant or applicant's representatives would like to make? Okay, we will close the public record at this time and move to our deliberation. Would like to start.
Well, I appreciate the additional information that was included with, the new information we received, for this meeting. It has answered all the questions that I had from the previous meeting, and I really appreciate that. So, for me, this record is complete and, done everything or answered the questions that, I have had.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I agree, and Mickey, thanks for the herbicide comment. I think removing blackberry by hand is very effective. I don't see any problem as long as you stay on top of it. You pick the new starts when they come up, and they go away. So I'm okay with approving this, subject to not using any herbicide, pesticide for blackberry removal.
Aaron,
I agree with Aaron.
Aaron, that almost sounds like we've got a motion coming from you there. You want to make a motion?
I move to approve the application contingent upon the applicant not using pesticides for blackberry or any other invasive or non-invasive species.
Or herbicide?
100%.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
I believe there were 3 other conditions attached to the city's report. Do we need to read those?
I think it'd be 14.
Okay. So if I can do that. All right, I move that we approve this application subject to the following conditions. 1, erosion control measures shall be installed by the applicant and approved by the city prior to the start of work. 2, the city shall be notified no less than 48 hours prior to on-site disturbance. 3, the use of motorized equipment shall be limited to the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Or I assume that's the interval between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. per municipal code section 8.16. And then 4, I don't know exactly how it was worded previously, but excluding the use of herbicides.
And pesticide.
And
So there's a motion with a second on it. Are we all okay moving away from that motion with second to the motion that has been proposed? That has not yet been seconded.
Yes, I'm strike the first motion and go with the second motion that is proposed.
Are the first and the second nominees of the earlier motion okay with that one? Commissioner Matusek?
Sorry, yes. I missed the previously imposed conditions. So Les, thanks for reading those in.
All right, so we have a second for the motion that's been.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? That's what we call a vote.
Commissioner Orloff,
Yes.
Commissioner Bates,
Yes.
Commissioner Matusek,
Yes.
Yes.
Commissioner Moore. Yes. Commissioner Wade. Chair Newton.
Yes. Okay. The U 2501 is, approved. Yeah. Perfect. Conditions met. Okay, we'll move on.
Would you, mind, just 1 second? So, Ms. Miller, you, received your approval, this evening with, those conditions. We'll follow up with you, but, you'd be free to, leave if you'd like, but, your application was approved.
Thank you very much.
Okay. We'll move to our next item, it's administrative appeal. AA 2501, Doug and Sue Friedel for an administrative appeal of the city's denial of a tree removal permit. Doug and Sue Friedel for an administrative appeal of the city's denial of a tree removal permit at 379 Oakland Avenue, tax lot 353, map 5, C. The appeal will be reviewed pursuant to the County Code section 17.18 request for review. Does anyone object to the jurisdiction of the planning commission to hear this matter at this time? Does any commission member believe he or she has a conflict of interest or personal bias?
I have a possible conflict of interest, and I'd like the advisement of my fellow commissioners and city attorney. I was the original designer on this project in 2019. So I have knowledge of the project, of the tree removal. I also provided the Friedels with the original information that we had submitted to the city at the time of the application in 2019 for this application. So I do not really know where I stand on this one, so I'm looking for counsel to you guys and the city attorney. Well, it was well before my commission, so, but I still had involved with it, that's sort of where I'm on the line.
I could see how this could put us in an odd spot. I do have some questions about the initial approval process and how that relates to the subsequent approval process and where we are today. And I think there's a possibility we could be biased by any of your comments. That's my own personal opinion. And I haven't thought it through entirely. That's my first take. I think we're close to a conflict there.
That's why I'm asking your.
Yeah, I think
And I understand the direction.
probably it's fine.
And, yeah, I would think we may have questions of EJ also.
That's fine, I'd be willing to recuse myself based on that.
Although I will say, I'm not sure. We may have to go to council here on this one, whether we could ask questions of you, accuse yourself.
If you recuse yourself, actually, it would be great if you could come and sit in one of those.
Oh, I
chairs briefly.
Definitely.
And not provide any testimony.
Not participate in any way.
I just like, I think out of abundance of caution, I appreciate you.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Commissioner Ardell, thank you.
I'm less concerned about it maybe than, some of the other members here, but I appreciate the fact that you did.
Oh, most definitely.
Okay, anyone else? Has any commission member had any ex parte contact or made a site visit? Site visit. Do we have a staff report, please?
Yes, the appellant, Doug and Sue Friedel are appealing the administrative decision to deny an application to remove 2 Sitka spruce trees, 379 Elk Run Road. The tree removal permit application materials indicate that subject trees are to be in close proximity to the foundation of a house and have the potential to cause structural damage as the trees naturally grow. It is noted that the house was expanded in 2022 and the trees in question were estimated or evaluated at that time. During the expansion, the house, the post beam foundation was used in order to minimize encroachment into the critical root zone. During review of the 2025 tree removal application, the city arborist found the conditions of the property do not yet warrant removal of the trees. His evaluation dated March 11th states, quote, "There are still several years before the trees will grow into the residence. I estimate the tree is growing in diameter at a rate of 1/8 to 1/4 inch per year," close quote. And that concludes the staff report.
Okay, is there any additional correspondence? We've not seen these things.
There was, one letter I think everyone received from a Ken Seeger, I believe that was, that he had sent that out, so I think everyone has that.
Yeah. Okay, we'll move to public testimony. Pertinent criteria to be considered are noted in the staff reports and listed on the criteria sheets on the meeting page of the city website. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed toward those criteria or other criteria in the comprehensive plan or municipal code which the person testifying believes apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal based on that issue. Prior to the conclusion of the initial evidentiary hearing, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional testimony, arguments, or evidence regarding the application. The planning commission shall grant such requests by continuing the public hearing or leaving the record open for additional written testimony, arguments, or evidence. Persons who testify shall first receive recognition from the chair state their full name and mailing address, and if appearing in a representative capacity, identify whom they represent. Is there a presentation by the applicant? Yes. Please come forward.
I'm Doug Cadell. My local address is at 379 Elk Run, Cannon Beach, Oregon. My mailing address is 168 Capella Court, Northwest Washington, 98027. Kind of nervous tonight, so please bear with me. I have, the record is long and I have a few, I'm not going to go through it, but I just have a page of things I'd like to talk about. I made copies for everyone. Is that okay if I pass them
Um, do you have enough copies for everyone sitting here?
I have enough for everyone that's at the table.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Mr. Cradell, just for the sake of the people sitting here who do not have the opportunity to read this before you speak, and the people online, can you give us kind of a quick summary of what you're hoping to accomplish with what you've given us here? Or are you just going to read it, or what was your plan?
I am going to read to you, and this is some of the stuff I'm going to read to you. And I'm hoping you'll change the mind of the city.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so the first paragraph that's at the top here is quoted from the city code. And I don't think you'll find it anywhere else in the packet, which kind of surprised me. But this is what the code is. The city shall issue a tree removal permit if the applicant demonstrates that one of the following criteria are met. Removal of a tree which poses a safety hazard. The applicant must demonstrate that the condition or location of the tree presents foreseeable danger to the public or foreseeable danger of property damage to an existing structure. And such hazard cannot or danger cannot be reasonably alleviated by pruning or treatment of the tree. And so, that's the standard. And then in addition to that, the code adds the, by reference, the certified arborist code. And that's the second paragraph on there. And it's certified arborist responsibilities concerning public health and safety. Certificants and candidates must, one, follow appropriate health and safety procedures in the course of performing professional activities to protect clients, employers, employees, and the public from conditions where injury and or other harm can be foreseeably, reasonably foreseeable. And so what I think is so important about that is, again, both of those, the question is, the issue is a foreseeable hazard. That's what the code is written on, that there is a foreseeable hazard. A foreseeable hazard means something that happens in the future, as opposed to a current hazard, which means something that's happening right now. And that's really what I think the key is to the code, is that we do not have to wait for our home to be damaged, for us to be injured, to take action. We can take action based on a foreseeable hazard. And that's in the code, it's an absolute right that we have. The next on my talking sheet, I took the top line off of the two reports that we've had done on the trees, that they are rated as 9s. And on the first one, which was done by Arbor Care, the concern is pump failure leading to a whole tree failure. So that's what keeps me up at night. Because if that happens, that's the end of our house and possibly the end of us. And the next one was done recently by limb walkers, and it says same thing, hazard 1. And so I want to know what hazard 9 is, because that's what I'm living with. When I look it up, what it says is a tree hazard evaluation form rating of 9 indicates a severe risk level. This means that a tree with a rating of 9 has multiple and significant defects posing a high risk of failure and potential impact on people and property. And so that's what we're living with. That's what my son, when he's with us, that's what we're living with. And when the grandchildren are with us, that's what we're living with. And so that's a concern to me. And so when the city denied our application based on the hazard not being current, that's not the code. That is not what the code is. We do not have to have a current hazard for us to be able to take action. It's a foreseeable hazard. And when the city's arborist also says that he wants us to have a current hazard rather than a foreseeable hazard. Now, I believe that everyone, all three of the arborists have acknowledged a foreseeable hazard, including the city's arborist. And the reason why I know the city arborist agrees that it's also a foreseeable hazard, because he set out a formula on how to, when it becomes a current hazard. Now that just by definition is a foreseeable hazard. So in my view, all three arborists agree there's a foreseeable hazard. The code absolutely allows us to remove the foreseeable hazard. And so there should have been no reason why this was refused. Now, for some reason, if you disagree with me and you believe that we need to wait until the or if you agree with the city that we have to wait for our house to be damaged and our family to be injured, then I have included several images that shows the current damage to the home from the currently hazardous trees. And so in the package, you'll find pictures of stress cracks on the concrete foundation. You'll see where the pillars are leaning over. You can see where the floor system is shifted towards the house, away from the tree, and that is, we have sheetrock damage and cracks that are happening. And so, and as far as the injury of hazardous people, that, you know, we have to live in that house, and it creates a lot of stress and concern when we have to live in a house knowing that two of us consider this an extreme hazard that should be taken care of now, and that the city seems to want to wait until we're damaged and injured before any action can be taken. And so I'm hoping that you will help us get rid of this hazardous situation so we can continue to use our home the way it's intended to. Thank you for your consideration. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Are there questions for you?
I have a couple of questions.
I have a question.
Mike, if you could just hold on one second, we have one ahead of here, and then I'll come get
Good.
this.
Your letter talks about how the original arborist put something in the wrong place on property when that expansion of the home was made. Can you elaborate on that a little bit for me?
So yes, that the house as designed and approved by the city had 12-inch eaves on it. And you can actually see that in the packet. You'll see there is a page like this, and you can actually, it's hard to see, but you'll see that on the new building, there is a 12-inch eaves. But if you look at the picture as built, that's also here, that there is no eave, and the tree is right up against the house. And so the arborist who wanted these trees saved put the boundary so we could not remove the tree that needed to be removed to build the house, the room, as it was designed and approved by the city. And so as a result of that, we got a call from the contractor and said, we can't build it as designed. And then we discussed, well, okay, do we stop work or do we go ahead with what can be designed? And that also has to do with the, in the arborist report, that they want us to accommodate the tree, which is also not. But there's nothing we can do because there's no eaves. So the only way we could accommodate the tree, which we don't have to, that's not it, is to structurally change the wall of the house there, make a little room or something for the tree there before it has to be taken down. And that's not in the code. The arborist also wants us to plant trees now, so that when the tree falls down, they'll be mature trees. That's not in the code. It's just so much of what's in the arborist is not in the code.
The other question I had, one of the arborists says that, the removal of those trees may potentially damage the other trees or, inhibit their growth or their health by removing these two trees. Are you concerned with that at all? Kind of been down.
I wasn't concerned about it. That the tree that the city arborist made that. And the other arborists we've had come in feel that tree is healthy. There isn't any problem. It's not like these two trees that have hollow parts underneath of them and they're too close and the roots are in there. So that tree that he talks about isn't a concern to me. If, that's something that I'm gonna want to think about in the future, but the arborists that we've had like that say that tree is not a problem, but the concern is that, these two trees are the ones that are affecting our house. This other one, I'm confused about it because the city arborist almost makes a point that all three of them should. And, and if that's something you want to decide, we want it to be safe, but to me, putting our family at risk, so this other tree can stay there is not what we want.
All right, do you have any plans in the future to replace these trees at a different location on your property, so that
Based on what I thought the code was, is that the city would have approved this and then told us what to replace, and we would do that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Other question?
I have a question, but I don't think it's fair to ask it of you. Really, it's a question of the various arborists, but at least I have to make an observation. One of the big differences between their report seems to me, the evidence of, whole roots. I think there was even some decaying, decay that was noted in at least one of the arborist reports. But it seems to be a difference of opinion. I certainly don't read that out of the city arborist reports at all. I would believe those to be perfectly healthy, viable trees. What the reason that's important to me is that our code clearly gives us reason to remove diseased trees or dying trees. It's a little harder to do, in my view, when it's a perfectly healthy tree. The reason to remove it are a little bit more subjective, although I'll grant you've got some pretty good evidence that you've got property damage. If in fact the trees are diseased, then that would be an important factor for me. Just an observation, I think, really more than anything else.
May I respond to that?
Oh, sure.
So if these trees were in the middle of our yard, like many of the other trees, we've only developed about 25% of our lot because we like the trees. We haven't put a yard in, we're gravel driveway, we've done everything we could to save all the trees. So all of the trees there, I would completely agree with you that there's no foreseeable hazard for them because they're healthy trees growing in an area where they can't cause any problem. Having a healthy tree that is so close to a house that is causing damage, that with a 15-foot sway at the top and inches at the bottom, it can hit the structure of the house, push the room in, snap the tree. Those are all reasons why it's okay to take a healthy tree down. And the code does allow that because it's a foreseeable hazard.
Yeah, and I'm not disagreeing, and I'm not unsympathetic at all, I want to leave you with that. I just wish that our experts would agree a little bit better in the record than what I read. You know,
I'm disappointed in the process that we've used. I would have liked it if we would have sat down with the city and the arborists, maybe the city could have talked to the city arborist about what the code actually says, so that he wouldn't put a bunch of stuff in there that's not even in the code, and make decisions on things like current hazards as opposed to foreseeable hazards. I mean, that's what I think. I don't see how any other decision could be made, because you should not be able to hold me that I have to wait till the foreseeable hazard converts to a current hazard. That's not in the code, and the city should not be doing that. And so I would have loved a different process where we could have sat down and talked about it. But that, I was asked about that, and I was told that's just not the city's problem. So,
Commissioner Bates, you had a question?
Just a quick question of the applicant. I'm just wondering what the design considerations were in leaving that tree in place when you built the addition.
there wasn't a design consideration. We were stuck because the city arborist had put the area of the stay out zone in a place where we could not complete the project as it was approved by the city. And so, you know, that was a design change that was forced on us by the city arborist, which he should not have been able to do. He should not have been able to force an approved change to a plan.
Nonetheless, you knew the tree was there when you selected the footprint for the addition, so to some extent, you knew exactly how close that.
Yes, those trees were supposed to be removed.
And so why did you not follow through with that process? I think that's where I'm getting lost in the narrative.
Because we were stuck between having the project go forward or sending all the subcontractors home and argue with the city and the city arborist about whether or not they should have stopped us from building it as designed. The contractor had a workaround, and it was to leave the eaves off the house. And that way we could keep going without incurring any additional expense, sending everybody home and waiting for whatever the process was to get the city arborist to change the decision that he had made.
So ultimately, you did make a decision to build close to trees, knowingly, because you do, like you said, you had the choice to say, stop work, deal with the trees in a way that would not create a future concern. But you decided to stick with the plan and just adjust your eaves. So you knew you did make a decision to build close to those trees.
Well, so in my view is that the city owes us the eaves. And so we can come back and say, okay, those trees need to come down so we can go ahead and finish it as approved by the city. And so I get your point. We went ahead and built it anyhow, knowing, but we have lived with those trees for years now. And as they creep closer and closer and closer, it was always known that at some point, those trees were going to come to contact the house.
So you've had this addition here for 3 years, and over that time, they've probably grown by an 1/8 to 1/4 inch per year.
Something like that.
Can you elaborate on, and by the way, the purpose of these questions while you're here is to give us as much information as we can. And it really is to give you every opportunity to give us as much information as clear as we can get before we close the record. We really want your opinion on this stuff so that when we go to deliberate, we have as complete a picture as we can. I've had a tree hit my house. It fell from me to this microphone from my wife and I. It's a terrible thought to have. So I have all the empathy in the world for you. At the same time, I sit in this chair with the responsibility of in taking my personal experience and trying to tie it together, if you will, with this code that we're responsible to. You said something that caught my attention. You believe the city owes you the trees removed based on the location of the eaves. Why do you believe that? Can you elaborate on that?
In response to being asked why we went forward with a project, didn't we accept the city's arborist decision when he decided not to let us put the eaves on the house? And so I believe that since the design has been approved and it's still approved, that, you know, we should be able to come back to the city and not have to show that the tree is hazardous. We should be able to go ahead and put the eaves on and remove trees, because that's what the city said would do. It's the city arborists that more or less undid what the city had approved, and so that's the reason why I said that. Now, whether or not we actually want to put those eaves are on, that's, you know, that's kind of not key in my mind. What's in my mind now is that the trees have grown, that the hazard is real, that arborists are telling us that we're in danger, and I believe the city needs to take action now to address the hazard.
Can you make a distinction for me? This is something I was thinking about. The tree is 100 feet plus or minus tall.
I believe so.
It was a danger when you had your initial structure, and it continues to be a danger with your addition.
It becomes more of a danger each day, so it was a danger, now it's more.
Is it more of a danger based on what you built, or is it more of a danger on just this tree aging?
So I believe it's a combination of the tree getting closer to the eaves, us being able, you know, everyone is just looking at a piece of paper. That's not the same as standing out and watching the tree sway towards the structural wall. I mean, I didn't have that opportunity. Now I can see it happen. When we went forward with the project, there wasn't any talk about, oh, you know, you're gonna start seeing structural cracks in your foundation. And there wasn't any talk about, well, you know, these piers we're having built to prolong the life of the tree, that they're gonna start leaning over at some point. So there wasn't any of those types of discussions. So whether the risk has actually changed or our awareness of the risk has changed.
I had a question. When I look at these pictures, I wouldn't know the difference between tree roots and simple settling. Cracks happen in concrete and in drywall, I know, from my own home. Have you had a structural engineer actually come out and say that what you are seeing that you're calling damage due to the tree is due to the tree as opposed to natural settling?
We have not.
Are there other questions? Anyone online? Do you have any representatives? Would you like to speak?
I have not.
Okay. Anything further you'd like to add?
No. Thanks for listening.
You bet. Thank you. Are there any presentations by proponents?
It's 364 Oak Run Avenue. I'm a full-time resident, neighbor, obviously, across the street. And I just wanted to say that I believe that this should be approved. If anybody went and looked at the situation, particularly the one tree that's not so far from the finish up on the gable, just a common sense say this is a very bad situation. And we have had a number of trees in our neighborhood that have fallen and caused damage to houses. At least a couple have been pretty severe, and the Dells have also had some damage from a fallen tree. So we live up there in these very tall trees, and sometimes it's a little scary when winds blowing hard. I've got a couple trees myself that are pretty scary, but anyway, just like to say, I believe that there's a serious hazard there, and the commission should approve the request.
Thank you. Are there other proponents? Anyone online? Okay, we'll move to opponents. Is there anyone opposed? The applicant has the opportunity to come again with any additional thoughts, anything you'd like to add?
No, thank you.
Okay. Any last questions for the applicant before we close the record? Okay, time we'll close the record and move to deliberation. Would like to start.
I find this a complicated one because the code envisions damage to an existing structure, but in essence, that structure didn't exist until Friedels placed it there. The tree was a clear concern at the time. And choosing to move forward, I'm having a hard time balancing how this code envisioned that tree protection would work.
Anyone else?
I think I had similar concerns. It's, the code, as I read it, is focused on risk to a structure from a tree. Yet, because the tree was there first, and then the addition, this is almost risk to the tree from a structure because of which came first. And it doesn't really deal with that. I wish we were here in 2022 talking about this, right? When we could really make a good decision that would help everybody. But that's all, in my opinion, all water under the bridge. It's not the facts we have to deal with today. I believe, subject to requiring, a true engineering study to verify that the damage actually is due to the tree, which I believe, I think they do have sufficient justification for making the request they're making.
Mike, I see your hand up.
Yeah, just a couple things. It points out that we have a pretty bad tree code, right? And we need to get that tree code fixed quickly. But, in response to the applicant, there were a lot of pot shots taken at the city arborist. And the reality is, two experts can disagree on a matter and it can be totally legitimate. So I'm not happy about a position of having to overrule the opinion of somebody who represents the city and has done it well for a number of years. On the other hand, I get what the applicant's going through here, and I understand their concerns. The difficulty for me, and it's pointed out by the letter that came in, and that letter says, yeah, it's a problem. It's really close. And by the way, if that tree falls, it's a problem for me too. We can talk about every tree in that neighborhood being a hazard as being reasonably foreseeable. And where do you draw the line? I mean, if it's a matter of the tree across the street looks like if it blows hard enough, it's going to fall on my house. Yeah, that's a risk we take in this environment. And I'm not so crass as to say that, if you don't like trees, don't move to a forest. But, I almost feel that way in some cases, particularly when letters like that come in, or when, somebody takes a shot at the city arborist for a decision that was legitimately made. So I just want to defend the city arborist here. It doesn't mean that I don't feel for the applicant. I understand their problems. The problem occurred, though, when they made a decision to design in that direction toward the trees, as opposed to another direction. And that's what a new code would fix. So, yeah, I guess I'm up here rallying for something that doesn't exist. But this is not an easy question, and it's not a matter of the city being bad or good. It's that the applicant put us in a position of having to make a difficult decision. And I'm just going to leave it at that.
Well, I will be as crass to say if you don't like trees or don't want to live under a potentially hazardous tree, don't build in a forest. So thank you for that, for teeing that up for me, Mike. But I don't think you can cause a problem and then benefit by taking trees down to fix it. You could have built in a different direction. You could have built a little bit smaller. You didn't. You made the decision, because your contractors were available. And I know what a pain in the neck contractors are out here. If you would have told them to go away, you might have never seen them again. So, kudos to you for building. But now I don't see approving this as being reasonable under the circumstances at this point. You made the decision. Here we are. And I personally live. I love trees. I don't love the hazard that the trees in my yard present. I mean, when winds get above 60 miles an hour in the winter, My wife and I sleep in the basement because we had a tree fall on our house. And yeah, it's scary, but you know, it's only a few times a year. Sleep in the basement. Don't sleep in the house, and you know, hope for the best. I mean, that's a oversimplification of the problem, but you built there, you made that decision, and I just don't see taking the trees down at this point without something further from a structural engineer being reasonable.
I came in with a lot of my questions kind of centered around the way you guys are thinking. But having looked at the tree, which the city did approve a structure next to, and hearing a few key things this evening from the applicant, I am moved more toward away from my initial thought. The city did approve it. How we let a tree be that close to the house, even not, it's still that close. And whether, you know, 100-foot tree is a danger, as you said, Mike, to a lot of people, besides just the applicant. It's a danger when they built the house, it's a danger to the structure. But there is the question of the tree moving, that base moving. Potentially, I can't say unequivocally it is the cause of the damage, although it seems very possible. Is it possible then if the tree hit the house, it could snap? I heard that tonight. I don't know. Is that house, is that structure there possibly acting in a way that would cause the tree to maybe not be able to sway in the wind as naturally as it ordinarily would? That's the question I don't have an answer to, that I did not come into this conversation thinking about. The idea of having an engineering report around, you know, the cause of damage, I think is something that is giving me a little pause. I think it may be a good idea. The idea that, again, I don't mean to be crass, but that tree's coming down, it's 100 feet tall, and it's going to do a lot of damage. But if it's coming down because of the structure that the city approved, if that could be shown to me, then this is an easy decision in my mind. We should allow this tree to be taken out. And I love trees as much as anyone here at the table. You can see me in them 2 times a year in the 11 I have in my yard. But we did have a process, and I think you were touching on this, Mike, that was flawed to let a tree be that close to begin with for improved structure.
To be the counterpoint, though, I think that we also know, we get applicants in here all the time saying, I know there's a tree there, they want to take the risk, they want to build close. Why are we putting that in the city? The applicant has the information from their arborist. So to say that the city did something, I find that a mischaracterization, because you know as well as I do that we get applicants in here who will do anything it takes to make the building footprint be what they want it to be, and often place the planning department in a really, really complicated place when they know that something's not right, but the applicant basically insists.
I thought about that too, just the precedent is really dangerous. If we allow that sort of action where someone just kind of bullies their way into it and I'll come back and get it later. Nonetheless, they have the right to do it. And we have a code that allows that. And I think that's, as Mike said, there's room for improvement in our code. And we're being given evidence tonight of a very specific example of room for improvement.
I think I can't see overturning the city's decision unless there was evidence from an arborist who actually could come in and talk about the questions you had. Just what does it mean if it's that close to the building? Does that actually mean it's more likely to fall over or snap? There's no mention of that in these arborist reports. No one said, well, because it's close to the building, it's more likely to fall over. The conversation has been around damage to the building, but I would need a little more information both about what that whether there is actually damage and whether we are talking about an increased risk of that tree actually falling.
Did you also like, or what did you think of Leslie's suggestion about the engineering report on what was the damage?
Right.
So arborist and engineering, right? How do you feel better about a decision to come over?
Right, I think to say that there's a hazard, I would need more information.
Okay.
or even a foreseeable hazard. And I think I would say that foreseeable doesn't mean foreseeable anytime in the future. It's a somewhat near event. So I don't buy that just because a hazard can happen in 5 years from now, it's foreseeable. I think we need to stay a little closer in time than that for me.
Anyone else?
Well, you know, I mean, I started with this, I was concerned that the three arborists and the discrepancies I read in the reports, and until that gets a little better cleared up, I don't know. They probably are not the right people to determine whether or not the photographs of damage we've seen are due to the tree or not, but it just seems to me that three arborists ought to be able to come closer together than what reports. And my concern is kind of like what I think I've heard. Sometimes the arborists that work for profit are not always the best. They sometimes want to do what their clients want to do a little more than they want to adhere to a code. That's the reason we have a city arborist, and he is not allowed to work for individuals for that very purpose, to ensure that there's no potential bias. And that's why I'm going to give our city arborist a little bit more credit because of that. That's the way the city has set it up. But I'm waffling here, but I would like to see a little, if we're going to request anything, I'd like to see a little more information on the actual condition of the trees. I see pictures of hollows under roots. I don't know what that means really. You know, I don't know if that means the tree's gonna fall down soon or if it's just the way it is. I don't know.
Anyone else? I saw it coming, or I thought about it was brought up, you know, why is there a need for city arborists? I agree with you, and I would add, if that same company also cuts trees, on top of potentially being swayed, it does add an undue, potentially adds an undue bias to cut.
I have no evidence of that.
I have no evidence either. Actually, I do have personal evidence of someone doing that, but I have no evidence that the parties, or any of the groups involved, but I have seen it. Are we feeling like we might be close to a motion here or anything?
Question for you, does it have to be a motion or can be a request to go and bring in those arborists and perhaps give us the report? You know, a brief engineering report. I mean, we don't have to make a decision today. I would love to, but if we're short of information, I can't see a motion fixing that.
Well, with the record closed, I think we are at some sort of a decision point.
No.
We are.
If somebody were to ask for a continuance, we would not be at a decision point, correct?
No, we're past continuing.
Are we?
We closed the record.
Okay.
So, but we are voicing, we have voiced the concerns. It's out publicly, what would be great to see, about as good as we can do at this point.
My problem with a motion is it would be a conditional. It would be bring in the arborist and bring in an engineering report, show us that, you know, that the trees are actually causing the damage. And sure enough, you can go cut the tree, but does that work?
I don't think it works well. That sets us up for that's an open-ended process. What arborists do we agree on? I mean, there's just a lot of questions around that. We would be setting ourselves up and the city up for a decision without a lot of gray.
All right.
Would it be worth reopening the record to ask if the applicant would like to continue? Because I would hate to say, appeal denied, come back and pay the fee again.
My gut says yes, I just,
We could let our counsel weigh in.
Yes, thank you. The Kennedy Municipal Code procedures that apply to this appeal allow the planning commission to either hear the matter de novo or admit additional testimony without holding a de novo hearing. You could grant a request for a new hearing upon making some findings. You do have some leeway here to accept additional testimony and evidence and potentially hold a de novo hearing.
can it be more simple than a de novo and just say we're opening the record? We've done that before. The only reason I'm hesitating, I don't want to just keep coming back to opening the record, but I also want to be fair and think it's a great point.
Yes, I think you can. This is a little bit peculiar because it's an administrative decision that the city planning department made, so you're the appeal body here. Which I think is different from normal. You have the first shot of the
We can do what we want. All right, we're gonna come back. We're gonna open the record again and allow you to come up and address a question the council has. So the question, who would like to put it? Steve?
When, after you have the question, could I have some input? Sure. After that first.
Would you, is your input better coming?
Yeah, maybe the one thing that I would request of you is if we're going to ask the applicant to bring this information in, and it's gonna take some time, that we would ask the applicant, or the planning commission would ask them to extend the dates, that are involved in the time period that we're required to hear that. I don't know how quickly it is to get information, but it should be extended at least 60 to 90 days. And the applicant would need to agree to that. If the applicant would not agree to that, then I would suggest you make a decision.
Okay. You've heard us deliberating. Yes, we are, there's a few areas we're not entirely agreeing, or we're not entirely sure on. It would be helpful to have additional information. Additional information such as an engineering report suggesting that it's the tree causing the damage that was represented in the pictures that you showed us. And I'd like someone else to comment on the specifics of another arborist in the detail that would be helpful to have in yet another arborist coming forward that is not me representing.
Yeah, I think, for me, one of the concerns is that I am not seeing anything in these reports that discusses the concern or non-concern around the tree sway and whether the sway is limited by the building, it makes it more likely to fail, et cetera. So a little bit more detail from our arborist on, let's say, tree mechanics in a windstorm, as well as, again, I think we need another opinion on just what is the health of the trees? Are they actually hazard trees or not? Because we're not receiving a clear message on that.
Yes.
Does anyone else jump in?
I'd like to know if the roots are growing faster than the trunk itself, whether that might be something to consider. The other thing is, I'm not sure, even with an engineering report, we've already seen the photos that show the damage to the interior and exterior of the home. I'm not sure if that's soil movement, like the other commissioner has noted, or whether that's actually the root growth. And I'm not sure if one or the other of those reports from either an arborist or an engineer can tell us which is, because the tree root growing faster than maybe the trunk size would result in, earth movement anyway. So do we know if it's seismic, or do we know if it's the roots of the tree? I'm not sure we can determine that. The water report will be determining that.
So it kind of comes down to a question for reviewing. If you'd like us to render a decision tonight, usually provided, we will do that. If you'd like to give this body additional time and yourself additional time to provide us the additional information through the reports we've outlined, and the questions we've had, we will grant you that. Which direction would you like to go?
So I would like the more time.
Okay.
I would like those some more specifics as far as what it is that you will consider as credible evidence. And so, for example, for me to pay for a third arborist to come in and say something, you know, I don't think that's gonna help. I see that this group has a lot of confidence in the city arborist. I have nothing against the city arborist. When we put our permit in, we mentioned several things, including the sway of the tree, and those were all in as being concerns. City arborist could have spoken on those things. He could have talked about, oh yes, you know, they were listed. If you look at what our request came in, we listed all of these things out, and he could have spoke on each one of them. But he didn't. He spoke on none of them, and all he did was a calculation based on how fast the tree grows. And so, you know, in my view, that it would be good for the city arborist to come in and speak on each of the issues that was originally put in the application. And maybe after the city arborist spoke about them, maybe we wouldn't be concerned about a tree. All we know is that we have two arborists that we were required to hire to pay. The city wouldn't let us bring in the city arborist to look at it. And so we paid for it, we got the information, we acted on it. And so that's what we believe. And then we go to the city brings in the city arborist, which is an option. They didn't have to do it, but they did it. And the city arborist said, don't cut them down. You'll need to cut it down later. I think that's an important thing, is that he acknowledges the tree's coming down. It's just a matter of whether it comes down now or what he lists as several years, which is, when I Googled that, that's 3 to 5 years. I mean, he wasn't specific on how many years it was, and then he didn't talk about the sway of the tree. He took pictures, and that's the reason why I took pictures, because when he took the pictures, and it's in his report, those piers are leaning over. And I thought, oh my goodness, I hadn't noticed that. And that's when I went to the measurement. And so, you know, the city arborist, I think, should talk to the city about whether any of the things I brought up are valid, and go on the record to say, no, Doug is wrong, trees don't sway, no, those footings are being pushed over by something else, and at least he should be able to be put on the record for each of these concerns. So yes, I want more time. Yes, if you give me specific things to go do, I'll try to do, but I think some of the stuff you're talking about is like doing some sort of ground radar to find out whether or not roots happen to be under those piers that happen to be leaning or not. And so if you want to make something that specific, I'll look at it to see, because, you know, it means a lot to us, because we stay there, we want to be safe, we want to do what's safe for us. We want to, you know, if it turns out those trees aren't a problem and the other arborists were just plain wrong, then I mean, I'd be happy to know. So that would give answers. Yes, we'd like more time. If you give me specific things to go do, I'll try to do it. I'd like to encourage you to think about whose opinion you would value and maybe ask that person. I can't get the city arborist to come work for me, because that's the conflict. And if the city arborist is the one you want to hear that says everything's fine, and that all of these things I brought up is just plain wrong, and he's willing to do it item by item, then I think that's great, but I can't hire him. And it seems like he's the only person that you want to have confidence in.
So that seems pretty fair. I see people nodding. That seems like a fair request. How about the engineering report? Is that what level of detail can we add to have that be a additional information, make it a helpful.
To me, it's a black and white question. Is the movement caused by the tree, or is there something else going on?
So I don't know enough about it to know if it's black or white. It's rather to say, you know, it depends, I guess, on the equipment the team comes in with. You know, the comment that you'd have to go in with LiDAR and look for roots. I just don't know.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, you're looking at a body of people that are, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn, not arborists, not engineers. We're a pretty common sense group of people that if a report is put in front of us that makes common sense, we can interpret that. We're looking for something that says that the tree is the cause of damage to your property that we're seeing. In terms of the danger from the tree, we can talk to the arborist about that. But in terms of the structure itself, I think it would be helpful to have anything from a third party saying this is what's causing it or not.
I think that could be a structural engineer. It might be a geoscientist who can look at soils and understand movement, et cetera. So I don't know between those who we're talking about, but I would begin with a structural engineer.
Yeah, first comment I would say is, you know, anytime permits submitted, the burden is on the applicant to, you know, provide documentation and things like that. So when you talk about the city arborist coming in, typically he reviews what you provide him. So that was the information provided, that was the decision that was made on. With regards to the other information, I think, you know, whether it's a structural engineer, possibly talks to his arborist, gives them some information. The arborist may also know of others who could speak to that. And whether it's a structural engineer along with your arborist that does a report with some of the information that's been requested, that would need to be submitted. And like I said, it's gonna be important that Mr. Fidel agree also, and I would send him paperwork on that 90-day extension.
Sure. I know pivoting here a little on you in terms of a process. Has that helped you at all in terms of a framework for the additional information that would be helpful for this body to render a decision based on a broader set of information from us?
I just want to make sure I'm keeping up with the conversation. And so I believe that there's a request that we see what we can do to find out if there's a way of determining whether the root systems are actually causing the shifting in the foundations. And so that was what I heard. I believe I heard the commission say that you have a lot of confidence and you'd like to hear what the city arborist has to say about the issues that I've raised. And I'm not sure, but I think I heard the city staff say that's not the way things go, that I need to bring in another arborist.
I didn't say that at all. I said
Okay.
city arborist reviews what you submit to him. And so when you talk about all these other things that he should be looking at, really that's on you to provide that documentation, because he strictly reviews requests. He's not out doing the work and saying, this is what you should do. That's not what any city staff does. All the people that are here this evening, as you can see, have people that bring in their experts and provide the documentation that the plan commissions to consider. So he strictly just reviews the requests that come before him. And so from my perspective, it would be important. I don't think anyone's saying that we're not saying get another arborist. I think we're saying you can bring your arborist. I would probably make sense to have him or a structural engineer. I don't know if you noticed on the previous hearing, the person had, they were requested to bring in additional testimony. They had their wetlands expert as well as a stormwater engineer here to testify and provide additional documentation to them. So I would strongly suggest that when you do that, you also have your experts that you're working with available to testify and answer questions.
So if I'm understanding correctly, that if one of our arborists come in and says, there's concern about tree swaying and roots and the growth of it and these issues that I've raised, that this time, the city arborist will address each one.
Steve, couldn't the city arborist, now that this is an open appeal, come in and provide information?
We could have him here as well.
I think
Yeah.
that is the thought, that rather than ask the Friedels to hire someone,
Yeah,
to just ask the city arborist if he'd be willing to come speak to this at the next.
okay, all right, but still wanting the structural?
So the structural would be separate and that would be the responsibility of the applicants.
Yeah,
But the tree questions
we could have,
would be for our.
sounds good, okay.
Is that helpful? It is, thank you.
A lot there, you know, this is recorded. It'll be put back in its time. What's a reasonable time in terms of, how long do you think you need for, to get these reports put together? And Steve, oh, this is probably starts with you. Did you have something you wanted to add?
I'm Sue Friedel. And so my question is, will there be something in writing as a follow-up to this meeting that will lay out the amount of time, or are we just taking with us what's been said and as far as what the expectations and all, will there be a follow-up like letter to us so that we can?
I don't think planning doesn't normally provide that, so.
Okay.
What I can do is I can send some information in terms of generally speaking of what was discussed, and then I will send you the information on the signature needing the extension, the time period extension.
Thank you.
Maybe let's pin down a time frame. How much time do you think you need to get this additional information and thereby grant additional time for the city to render a decision?
I'm at a loss because I have no idea how long it takes to get things done. I mean, it could be a year. I don't know how long it'll take for me to get a engineer out that thinks that they can render a decision on something. Because as far as I know, it's kind of it's not the typical thing. It's kind of something that the paleontologists do and they look for fossils. I mean, that's so I don't have a good idea. I might be able to give you.
Are you comfortable with, and I don't know, but I know in our experience, a report can take from 2 weeks to 30 days. You then have to get back on the docket with the city. And that's the best case for reports being done, and you have to find someone. But my hunch is we could pretty quickly go through 60 days. It might make sense to add a little cushion on that. But, this is just me talking out loud. I don't know.
What kind of credential do you want the engineer to have?
Engineers have a standard of licensing that, they need to be licensed engineers.
So like professional engineer to look at it and say.
Structural engineer. Ideally, the
home inspector kind of engineer?
Typically home inspectors are not engineers. I mean, it's amazing if you found one, but we don't typically see that. We do see structural engineers.
You want someone like Terra Firma, or, I'm at a loss.
Terra Firma would be a good place to start. They may have a specialist there, and if they don't know who you should call, they may have some suggestions. I thought I heard someone say the arborist or arborists might be a good place to start. I can't imagine that, people that deal with trees and foundations don't sometimes have to deal with engineers to talk about the impact of the root system on the foundations.
If the soils engineer,
Soils engineers may have an idea, they may be able to speak to it.
I'm just worried I'm gonna get something and you're gonna look at it and say, that's not what we want.
Tom Horning, would Tom Horning?
Tom Horning.
Tom, what he does? No.
I have a sense that his specialty is not that. He's, I think, a geologist. Yeah.
I think if you look at structural engineering firms, you might be able to track someone down pretty quickly.
Can I submit the name of who it is I'm gonna do and You're
We have
gonna
that
approve it?
ability.
Sorry.
For us, we have no understanding of these issues, but we do, we can look at the reports.
I think an engineer will tell you whether you've come to the right place, if you explain what you're looking for.
I'm not so much worried about that, I'm worried about bringing something in and you'll look at it and say, that really doesn't do it. And so it's like I'm more interested in the part about when the city arborist will come back and talk about the things that are in the record and pretty much address them and say, this isn't right, this isn't right, this is right, I'm gonna sign my name, here's my seal. That's kind of what I'm interested in here, because that could just make everything perfect for everybody, because if he's willing to put all of it in, this is not a tree, and stamp it with his seal and not put his caveat on it that says, oh, by the way, we don't stand behind it.
May I offer an insight? Your own tree arborist said, if it's not the tree now, it might be the tree later. So, it's not like Jeff is or the city arborist is gonna come in and say it's the tree or it's not. Your own arborist couldn't make that determination. So, it's just get a structural engineer. If it's not a structural engineer, somebody will show you but people deal with houses moving all the time in this city. It's a fact of life, whether it's a tree or it's land movement. So, maybe a geotech, who knows? I just, but it won't be the city arborist saying you're right or you're wrong and going down with a list of questions. He will respond. He will be in the hearing at the same time that you bring in that information, and we'll reach a decision.
Is everyone quiet or did the audio go dead?
The audio went dead.
Okay.
Can you hear me, Aaron?
Yeah. I'm like, shit, what's happening?
There he goes.
Can you hear us?
Now I can.
A little
Now we
bit.
can. Sounds like you can hear us.
Yeah, loud and clear. I'm just talking out loud here a little bit. So I guess the point here is the city's arborist is the next professional to come before us. We'll have questions there. If we still come back to the question of whether we need an engineer or not, after questions of the arborist, we can come right back to this position we're at with you now and say, do you want more time to go get an engineering report? Or we may be satisfied we're not gonna blindside you with something that we haven't given you an opportunity to address. It just may take some time to get there, because it is, as you said, it's a unique position you're in. We wanna make sure we're handling it carefully, and really letting you know what we're thinking, and do that in cooperation with you, so that you don't feel like it was some one-sided process. Sound like a game plan?
It does.
Okay.
Do you have any opinion on whether I would be able to ask questions?
I think what we will do in that. I think what you could do is you could come up and put your questions to us. Okay. That you have for the arborist, and we will consider those questions. And the questions that we think are pertinent to our decision, we will ask. There may be some that we don't, there may be some that we think are, could be inflammatory in some way or another, and we might not go down that road. But if you play nice, no. If you put those questions to us, we will ask those questions as we think necessary for a decision.
Sounds like a great plan. Thank you for coming up.
Yeah, you're welcome. So, 30 days, we're at the next meeting, and we'll have the city
Next meeting date. You just have to continue it to the date certain, or it's just.
Yeah.
The date is May 22nd.
Okay, and we probably need to verify the other city charters.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want a tentative motion then on that note, just to?
No, let's just do it, and, let's hope that he's available, otherwise we'd have to come back and switch it for another time.
Okay.
I don't know how else to do it.
Okay, who would like to put a motion up?
So if I could just say, we're in no hurry, we just want to get it right.
Sure.
So that doesn't bother us if he's not available, we just want to get it right.
Sure, we're the same. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think, and I'm not trying to suggest otherwise, it's just that when we continue a hearing, we have to give it to a date certain. So that's why I was just, if, for example, we do it the next 30 and he's not available, then I guess at the next meeting, I'll let you know that and let everyone know that, and we'd have to extend it to a date that he's available.
So you're going to send a couple of things, you'll send a summary kind of what we're talking about here, and something where Mr. Friedel, Mrs. Friedel to sign off on to extend.
Right.
Okay, so that'll be a part of what you receive is an acknowledgement.
Then I'll probably just mail that stuff to you guys, we got your address, we'll just send it that way.
Yes. Okay.
Do we have a motion?
So I will move that we extend this item by 30 days to the May 22nd meeting.
Seconds. Again, further discussion? That's we follow up, observe. Can I hear some? All right. Next item is. Well, we have two items here. Well, I'm gonna run through them just as they're written, and we can maybe modify them after we get started. Our next item is a conditional use, CU 2502 J Olaf, on behalf of Eric Purdy for a conditional use permit for a residential build in the wetland buffer area. CU 2502. J Olaf of Colabana Design LLC on behalf of Eric Purdy for residential construction in an inventory wetland buffer area. The project is located at 196 Ross Lane, tax lot 10,200, map 51030 DA, and is in the residential medium density R2 zone district. The application will be reviewed against the criteria of municipal code 17.102, wetland overlay zone, and 17.86 conditional uses. Does anyone object to the jurisdiction of the planning commission to hear this matter at this time? Does any commission member believe he or she has a conflict of interest or personal bias?
I am the representative, so I will have to recuse myself to the presentation.
Okay, no objection. Has any commission member had any ex parte contacts or made a site visit? May we have a staff report, please?
Yes, this application is for the construction of a single family dwelling on an undeveloped parcel that is partially within the 50-foot buffer area of local wetland inventory site number 22 at the corner of Ross Lane and South Straight Street. In December of 2022, the planning commission approved setback reduction SR 2203, which reduced the front and east side yard setbacks in order to preserve trees on the subject property. After authorization of this setback reduction, the property owner applied for a building permit and started plan review. However, the permit was not issued due to the design build contractor becoming defunct before the plans were finalized. Subsequent to these events, the property owner has revised their plans for the proposed development of the property. The current application is for a 2,112 square foot house with a 1,056 square foot footprint that conforms to the standard setbacks of the R2 zone property. The total lot coverage for the proposed dwelling is 31%, and the floor area ratio is 0.42. The buffer area for local wetland inventory of site 22 was increased from 5 to 50 feet as a result of changes in rulemaking that became effective in July 2024. Prior to this change, the property was not considered wetland affected. Under the revised code, approximately 3,590 square feet or 72% of the 5,000 square foot lot is now considered a wetland buffer area. Municipal Code 17-102-020B allows for a wetland determination to be used in lieu of a delineation during circumstances when an inventoried wetland is not on the subject property and the applicant does not have permission to complete a delineation of the off-site wetland. The applicant has exercised the option to use a determination instead of a delineation with this application as the protected wetland is on a property that the applicant has not had permission to access. Moving into the applicable criteria. The Cannon Beach Municipal Code requires that development activities such as residential development within the wetland overlay zone require review and approval by the planning commission. For the development standards, the staff comment is due to the configuration of the map boundaries, there are no significant opportunities for development outside of the wetland buffer area. The proposed structure will have an area of 1,056 square feet, of which 977 square feet will be located within the map buffer area. No fill or removal of material from a wetland will be required, and the total amount of material to be displaced is estimated to be approximately 10 cubic yards. There are no identified stream corridors on the subject property, and the wetland determination does not indicate that stream corridors are present. The subject property is not considered to be part of a wetland lot of record, as it does not meet the definition established by 17-102 and was not considered a wetland affected parcel until July of 2024. Moving into the approval criteria for development subject to wetland lot of record requirements. The proposed development will result in a structural footprint of 977 square feet within a map wetland buffer area with two covered decks, gravel walkways, and a portion of the 9x18 off-street parking area, providing additional lot coverage within the buffer area. The application does not propose to alter the boundaries of the map buffer. Due to the configuration of the lot in the buffer area, it will be possible to excavate for utilities in the upland portion of the property between the dwelling and cross streets. Moving into the development standards for vegetation management. The staff comment is that application materials indicate that the owner will be responsible for monitoring the trees that will replace those intended for removal by the project. No significant amount of vegetation removal is anticipated outside of the need to clear and grade the area within the building footprint. And for walkways and off-street parking areas. Restoration of vegetation within the buffer area is to be carried out under the supervision of the applicant's wetland specialist. And moving into the development standards for construction standards, application materials provide details regarding the excavation and tree root protection practices that are to be implemented in order to minimize impacts during construction. And we also additional uses. Right, which apparently all of my staff prints off.
Could be a problem there. Unless I was dozing, I think you left off one short comment on 070 stormwater management.
On stormwater management, it's gone here. For the stormwater management, the application materials indicate that stormwater will be collected and discharged into the city's stormwater management system. Moving into conditional uses. The staff comment is the subject property is zone residential medium density R2 and a single family dwelling is permitted use in that zone. Ross Lane is residential in nature and the proposed development is consistent with other single family dwellings in the immediate area. The proposed development is small in scale and will not generate a significant amount of traffic or demand on public infrastructure. And that concludes the staff report.
Okay, thank you. Any additional correspondence?
No.
Great. Move to public testimony. The pertinent criteria to be considered are noted in the staff reports and listed on the criteria sheets on the meeting page of the city's website. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed toward those criteria or other criteria in the comprehensive plan or the municipal code which the person testifying believes apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to represent the issue precludes appeal based on the issue. Prior to the conclusion of the initial evidentiary hearing, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional testimony, arguments, or evidence regarding the application. The planning commission shall grant such requests by continuing the public hearing and leaving the record open for additional written testimony, arguments, or evidence. Persons who testify shall first receive recognition from the chair, state their full name and mailing address, and if appearing in a representative capacity, identify whom they represent. Is there a presentation by the applicant?
Yes.
Please come on.
Carola, Solar Levant Design, PO Box 563, Canby, Georgia, and representing the Purdy family. Thank you, Robert. Your staff report is fairly substantial and inclusive. Before I present my information, I would like to give Eric Purdy, the owner, a chance to speak to you all. I also have our wetland specialist, Christine McDonald, who's available for questions as we go. So at this time, I'm going to take Eric, just to give you a quick background and
as Jay said, Eric Purdy, mailing address is 14988 Southwest Lookout Drive, Tiger, Oregon. I'm just going to start by saying I did not pass Toastmasters. If I speak too fast, just let me know. That's what I have a tendency to do. 3.5 years ago, we started the endeavor of building our dream home in a town that I've been coming to since my early childhood. The only town we really wanted to look at for our family. The last time we appeared before this committee, we were praised for our additional work in attempting to preserve trees. Obviously, we have several large trees on our property, I believe 11 or 12 very mature trees. Unfortunately, our setback reduction that was granted at the time lapsed due to the dissolution of our builder, and we were not able to move forward with those plans. We have worked closely with an independent arborist who came at the recommendation of the city arborist to do our best to preserve the trees on the property in a way that far exceeds current code and even meets code that will be soon implemented. This has come with the added consequence of us losing the ability to build a garage due to the new wetlands code that was implemented last year that we're going to be discussing today. However, the benefit of us going through the tree protection process is that we had already performed the legwork of doing everything possible to preserve the wetlands on the property to our west and mitigate any possible negative consequences. So given that, we asked them to take all this into consideration when making your decision. And we're at your disposal to answer all your questions along with Jay and our wetland specialists. Thank you.
Okay, as you see on our agenda, we have multiple sort of applications pertaining to this lot. So, as we go through this, the first one will sort of explain the next couple as we go on why we separated these applications. Due to the nature of the mass amount of material that I provide you today, I did write a narrative, which I encourage you sort of follow, which I will be following as well. So where I sort of went through and did specific code requirements in the wetland buffer area. As Eric's pointed out, this has been a project of some duration. Unfortunately, they had a little bit of poor counsel prior to my involvement, where I came on. They had gone through the setback reduction process once already. Unfortunately, that didn't produce the desired results. One of the conditions was that stumps were to be left 24 inches high, which would make the structure have to be well above that and would not allow per code vegetation being removed underneath the structures. So first thing I did was to meet with the city's arborist and Todd Prager, our arborist, and to sit down and talk about the project and what could we do to meet the city's requirements. Not just at the time of our initial investment, but also knowing what the things that are going to be coming up. And that sort of directed the orientation of the house and where it stands. We, as you can see in some of the material, that a lot considerable amount of trees are right in the middle of the site. And the site is darn close to fully completely being a wetland buffer area. So we had close to a trifecta of difficulty in this project. Upon the determination of the location of the house is where we went forward with our structural engineering. And okay, we know where we're going to be at, what's going to be the least impact to one roof structure, and also taking into consideration wetland areas. So we have gone with a pile configuration of foundation, small footings, they're either square or slightly larger. And all these are going to have to be more than likely hand dug. Initially, as per the city, per our arborist direction. The arborist report is very in-depth. It explained very clearly on how to do protection and excavation. We're not looking to disturb this. We're looking to disturb the site as very little as possible. In regards to trees that are in the building foundation, they are going to be ground to grade level. Root structures are going to be retained. Excavation are going to be hand dug. Any roots larger than 4 inches will be notified at the arborist. We do not have to have our specific arborist there on site, but we will have an arborist there on site for excavation, as noted in this report. So just getting to my my narrative. We'll start, as Robert started out with, the uses outright permitted. We are single family use as permitted in R2 zone. We meet all our standards for lot size dimensions, lot coverage, lot and FAR calculations. We're actually 1,000 square feet under our FAR. So we're really keeping it on the small side. We're not looking for everything described in here. And going into our 17-102 for our wetland overlay zone, as noted, roughly 72% of this site is in the wetland buffer area. However, no wetlands are located on the site. We have chosen to go with the wetland buffer determination, accepting the city's mapping. And we have our report included from Christine McDonald based on site acquired observation. Again, no wetlands were identified on the site. Moving into our 17-1-250 development activities permitted. As noted, our buffer takes up 70% of the 5,000 square foot area and 96% of the build area. So we are right in the thick of it. As a corner lot, we have 15-foot setbacks on the street side and 5 foot in the rear. We have positioned the structure on the southwest corner as far outside of the wetland buffer as possible. So we are actually not completely in there. We have roughly 90 some square feet outside of it. We have provided a site analysis plan, in there, in our package, which provides you with the location of where the structure is, what is in the buffer, the line of the wetland buffer as well. We have site photographs included in our report from our wetland specialist. Our site development plan is within our site plan and our construction documents, also showing further information. And one thing that we also included was our site analysis, showing that moving the house to the south would be less impactful to the wetland buffer. Moving it north is just going to push us further into it, and moving into the east is going to impact the established trees that are within the setbacks. So we felt that this location was pretty much the best one, and the city arborist, again, working with city arborist is what determined that location. We've also provided a landscape plan. We're going to replant 4 trees, 12 shrubs are included with this package. Plant selection has been made under the advisement of our arborist and wetland specialist. Invasive holly, blackberry, and ivy underbrush is to be removed as part of our mitigation plan. We also, in regards to construction, I spoke about our foundation being the smallest possible, and we are using a product called diamond piers for the non-heavy load bearings, which are basically surface piers with small pylons that are driven in. So we're looking to lessen our impact to one, the wetland area, and also the tree root structure around it. We have all our construction details within our documents for your review as well. Getting to our stormwater management plan. Due to the nature of the site with all the trees, doing something like a dry well or something within the ground is not possible. We would inevitably impact the root structure. So we have opted to collect and dispose directly into the city's stormwater system. So all roof runoff will be directed into pipes underneath the house, into a trench that will exit to Ross Lane connection. I reviewed this with Public Works and had their approval. Moving our development standards, complete avoidance of the wetland buffers. So as noted, we're 90%, this contains 96% of the building area. Single family residence and limited footprint of 1,000 square foot, 1,056 square feet, that 977 would fit in the wetland buffer, which is under our required 1,000. The house will be elevated from 24 to 48 inches, following natural allowing the natural free flow of water, rainwater exists prior to construction. Excavation is only to occur at pin pile locations, no overgrading to be done on site. Just to note that had we been required to go through DSL and ACE, the qualification for a no permit, the removal of 50 cubic yards of material, this project is less than 10. So had we gone through, had to go through the DSL review, we more than likely would be able to receive a no permit required letter. Trees are to be removed only under the building footprint areas, and to be ground grades, so the root structure to be retained. No impervious surfaces for pathways, patios, parking are to be installed inside or outside of the wetland. And also note that, as Robert stated, this is not a wetland record. Utilities are to be installed, trench located in the same sort of pathway as the wetland or stormwater. So we're looking to do a single pathway for all utilities and stormwater to lessen the impact. Again, the Ross Lane connection seems to be the most obvious. We do have connections on both Ross Lane and Spruce, so we do have options. But due to the 50-foot spruce and the other 46-inch spruce, we may be limited there. But again, we have options for our utilities and rainwater, stormwater trenching. Our wetland mitigation, we have a very complete report with Christine McDonald. If you have any questions after my initial presentation, I welcome you to ask for those directly. Vegetation management, as noted by Robert, replacement trees are to be monitored by owners. Trees scheduled for removal or stump ground and grade, root structures are being maintained and undamaged. No grading is going to be scheduled. Excavation only to the extent of the pile foundation and under supervision license arborist per tree protection. Surface vegetation under the footprint to be removed other than surface, subsurface treatment structures as are required by organic structural code, not that we cannot have any organics underneath the structure itself, even though it is elevated. Replanting and restoration of wetland buffer to happen upon completion, so the construction overseen by our wetlands specialists. We're going to follow our standard management practice set forth in this section. Erosion control measures are identified on our site plan AS 1.0. Excavated materials removed or returned as in the backfill. No on-site storage or distribution of excavated materials are to occur on site. Our ground elevation is to be returned to its original state after pile excavation. And for root protection, we have a plan to include a thick layer of bark chips over landscape fabric if there is required, and we'll have to get a machine in to run piles. That is to be removed after excavation pile installation. We have additional information on that included in the favorite tree protection form. So at this time, that concludes my narrative. I'm open to any questions that you may have for myself, Mr. Purdy, or Christine.
You mentioned a little more color on the reason for two applications or two.
Yeah, our goal here is to gain conditional use approval for the house. Our follow-up application is for a setback reduction to allow us to have a small shed on the site, and that is due to the 1,000 square feet in wetland buffer. Our original intention was to have a 2-car garage, but that would far exceed our allowances for 1,000 square feet of structure and 400 square feet of additional hardscape. And that's why we have separated it, because we didn't want the setback reduction and the shed to be a determination of the house itself.
So by having that gross square footage in the two, it might jeopardize the main goal.
I'm sorry.
By having the larger footprint of the two, if you will, well, that might jeopardize the main goal.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. We didn't want the conditional use of the house to be bear upon the request for a shed.
Okay, got it. Any other questions?
I guess I would just
Yeah.
ask,
Go ahead, Mickey.
if we did consider the two together, if you do the setback reduction, that does mean the house moves to the south and further out of the buffer, is that correct?
Yes, it does. It actually does mean that the house moves
So
further
to
south.
me, it does help kind of consider all together in the sense that if we're talking about wetland impact, that allows us to bring it into the conversation.
Yes, it does. The setback reduction does allow us to have a reduction to lessen the impact on the wetland. But then with that setback reduction, we also have a conditional use request for the shed. Those are separate applications. They can be judged on separately. That's why we're putting in these 3 applications. Again, I didn't want everything to be tied in together. The ultimate goal is to get the conditional use for the house. Setback reduction only helps us with that. In fact, it would help us with locating the house. It would give us some flexibility because of the roots and the structures in there. There is inevitably that we will probably have to make some structural changes on those locations of those piles. But we won't know that until we put a shovel in the ground. And that setback reduction would definitely give us some leeway. But for this conversation right now, we're talking about.
Administratively, I think I understand why you've done what you've done. But did I hear you say that actually you prefer the southern location just from a feasibility standpoint?
Giving us the additional, the setback reduction will definitely help us with the construction of the house, and at least having the flexibility of being able to move pines or move the house forward and back. We're still staying within the channel of the trees that we're trying to preserve. It's just giving us a little bit of buffer and some play.
And is it okay to go ahead and ask questions really at one of the subsequent things that are before us. We haven't even opened the other applications. I'll hold my questions till later, or we can just continue on with the whole matter.
I'm be happy for another opinion here, but my hunch is we have to consider them separately until we as a body determine that we are okay considering them together.
Then let's do that.
And
I'll
I'll
take my question for later.
separate. I'll take them on, I'll take questions on for each application. I'm not gonna present the whole thing again for the next two.
Thank you.
Because I probably could not repeat it, but I think you guys know where I'm.
I do have just a couple of questions and I don't know, it looks like Mike's got his hand up. I don't want to take him.
No, go ahead, Mickey. I can wait.
I had one about the runoff. Obviously, our wetland code says that all water that falls in the buffer is to remain in the buffer so that it can return to the wetland, but yet you're taking runoff and you're sending it into the sewer, so it's leaving the site. Can you explain to me again why you had to do that as opposed to allow it to be dispersed on the site?
Typically, the disbursement would be into like a disbursement tank that's surrounded by gravel. I wouldn't want to just let runoff come down a pipe and go right into the system. I would need something to slowly disperse that because it is a quantitative collection. Normally I would put a drywall there.
Yeah.
Something that would be able to collect, suck it up and disperse it. So because of these root structures and the proximity of these trees, I don't believe I have an opportunity to do so. And I wouldn't want to do it as point distributions because it would be a considerable amount of water coming down out of one pipe. So that's why I chose to send it into the city storm and allow the natural rainfall around the structure to continue its flow.
Is there a way to do it? And again, I'm just kind of throwing this out, like a French drain where you had a point, but the point distributed out in a wider area.
Again, a French drain would be a perforated pipe buried in the ground, surrounded by gravel. Again, a major ground disturbance that I don't think I can get a 20-foot run without getting a tree. And in addition to having a foot of backfill gravel, backfill adding, not natural soil added to the wetland buffer.
What about having no rain gutters at all, just protections over the entries of the house and let it just disperse itself?
Typically for a foundation system, I wouldn't do that. This one, I could consider it and let it fall naturally or use rain chains to let it sort of come down. I was thinking of the more drastic measure to control, but if that condition that would allow us to let that fall. These are deep pile foundations. They are not going to be affected by water or ground surge or tree roots for that matter. These guys are stiff. So we had drilling out there. They went down and found out where what our capacity was and we designed around that.
Would certainly keep the Purdy's from having to clean their gutters.
In that area, if you guys are all for it, I would encourage it, and I would no problem doing it, because trying to get all those pipes running in the house is gonna be a challenge in itself. And it'll increase the size of our trench that we have to run for our utilities. So if you guys are okay with it, I think Eric would be, and myself would be.
Have any idea where the city storm drain goes from the Ross Lane location that you would tie in? Do you have that information?
No, I went to Karen and said, okay, where is my connection?
You know where to connect.
Yeah, that's all, because I don't know where it is. Karen told me I have access on both streets and I can choose which one's going to be best.
Sorry.
From the site visit, I noticed the one actually on Ross Lane is closer to the one on Spruce. The one on Spruce, I think is right there at the T where Spruce and Ross meet in the middle of Spruce. Whereas the one on Ross, I think is to the north center of Ross Lane, so that would probably be my viable choice if the reef routes weren't affected.
Yeah, the least the pass resistance is Ross. That's for sure. Because we don't have as many, and many of the larger trees right there. And it would be affecting, trees that would be preserved.
Mike, I see your hand up. Do you have a question?
Yeah, just a quick question. Again, I want to thank the Purdy's for bringing in a very detailed proposal. Help me understand, Jay, that north driveway, how much are you going to have to elevate that in that path? I'm losing you, Jay. Turn around and look at.
I'm not looking to make it perfectly flat. I would like it just enough that, we have a flat area. I'm not looking to elevate it to, say, elevation of Spruce Street. We're just looking to fill just as much as we need to have a decent parking spot and a pathway to the house.
Did we miss an opportunity by not just elevating that on piles like we did the house?
That's going to be in direct conflict with that 50-inch spruce. And that's why I went with a permeable surface.
Explain that. I didn't get how that would be in conflict with that. I'm looking at
If we put say a concrete pad there, and elevate that, then we have backfill, we have, impermeable surface on top of tree roots.
Yeah, I was saying on top of posts like you do the house, the piles.
That's a additional cost that I don't see necessary where we could just park on grade.
So the water that seeps down through from that east end of the property on the wetland lot of record, what happens with that? It just pipe through or what?
The natural runoff would occur.
And it wouldn't gather on that elevated path.
No, that's a permeable path.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're not putting any hardscape, any concrete, any asphalt. This is all compacted crushed gravel.
Yeah, it's hard to tell with the elevation that was provided, but it looks like there's at least a foot or two difference between the edge of the property and about the place where the path it goes across. So you're gonna have to raise that quite a bit, are you not?
Down, we'll park on a slope surface. I'm not looking to have it completely flat. And we have steps down from the house to get to that grade.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Jay.
Couple of questions about the mitigation plan for Donald. So my first question is, I didn't see mention of herbicides, but I want to make sure that the mitigation plan is not involving use of herbicides for removal of the invasives.
I think Jay might be able to answer that. They could easily be taken out by hand. We're talking about ivy. And, well, I'm not sure about blackberry, what Jay had in mind, but Jay, do you want to answer that?
I would just a natural, us picking out, with attention, the blackberries could be controlled. We have them everywhere, including my property, and it's attention to taking them out as they come in. It will be enough.
We all fight it.
Yes.
Doesn't matter where you are.
No.
I think my other question is, so the code requires 1-to-1 mitigation for disturbed area. So you have 977 under this application. Looks like it would be 911 if you got the setback reduction potentially. Square feet. I see the planting plan, but I don't see a calculation for how that equates in terms of area for that mitigation. So have you done that process of saying, making sure that there's that one-to-one mitigation?
There's, I'll let Christine talk more on that. That's the challenge of the site is that we don't have a lot of upland outside of wetland area or wetland buffer that we can mitigate.
Oh, no, mitigation can occur within the buffer, but it would mean improving the buffer. So for instance, the removal of the invasives, planting more species, it can mean improving the soil structure so that it drains water better, et cetera. So it would be within the buffer. And that is intended that it can be mitigation in the buffer, but just that you've got an area in the same square area as the household that's also being targeted for that improvement to enhance the biological viability and benefit. So I just don't see a calculation like that here.
I don't have a specific calculation. We did do a very inclusive replanting. Where one of our trees were falling on the site.
I did notice that.
Yeah, we're dropping it on the site to encourage what we lost there. With the replanting, we're gonna be working with songbird raptor. The falling of the tree is going to help the amphibian species that we're going to, that's in that category. Christine, do you have any additional information you can provide to us?
I know we're planting and, we're actually increasing diversity by getting additional species in there that currently aren't growing. I think that's a form of mitigation, but, eventually there are some trees on the site that are seedlings. They're about, 15 feet tall. And once you remove some of that, some of the overstory, those guys are going to take off. And the plan is for some of those trees to be left as well as planting additional trees. But like Jay says, it's not a big lot. There's not a lot of room to work with in there. But I think, we're doing the best we can with the small lot.
I wonder if I could share my thoughts on basically the same subject. I was trying to read your wetlands report, and I enjoyed doing that. But trying to understand what we were mitigating, right? How did we get back to where we started? And I didn't really see it, but there was a table 3, it's on page 160, that I believe came from Christina, I think, the name right? Anyway, and I think she's got 17 different parameters, a before and after snapshot. And I don't think you're taking enough credit for what you are achieving. But what I saw is that we're slightly degrading 2 areas, songbirds and mammals and carbon sequestration. And then the other, I think 15 parameters, they were the same. And yet, I think if you think about it, some of the things that you've talked about doing surely would improve some of those. So I don't know how you do what we're asking for to say, what you started with is what you ended up with. But that's what I was looking for it, just in those, characteristics that a wetland expert knows. And wondered if maybe that was a place that we could expand on it a little bit.
So, basically the process I used was to take.
Someone should mute their speaker. You're live. Okay, please go ahead.
Is that me?
It is right now, but I don't know if it was or not. It wasn't your voice that was talking. It was sounded like talking to someone else. It's good now. Whoever muted.
Okay. I was just going to say that the process we use is one that's used in mitigation projects with DSL. And so there are 17 different functions that they want you to look at in a wetland. And so we're extending some of those functions into the buffer area. So you first look at the existing conditions and then the post-project conditions. And you're right, there were 2 of them that would be difficult to mitigate for. And many of the others, like water storage and delay, very important function. I mean, it's just not going to change because of the way that the project is designed. The fact that we're, leaving the root structure, that's another, great thing to do of those big trees. So a lot of these functions just aren't really going to change much. But something like sequestering carbon, I mean, trees do that. And, it's going to take a while for the trees that will be planted to return to, what those trees are doing now. And songbird, raptor, and mammal habitat, there are, when you take away the big trees, you're taking away some of that habitat. So those were the two that did actually, that are really difficult to mitigate for. And I'm not sure I'm answering your question, so go ahead and ask me another question if I'm not.
I will admit it wasn't a very well asked question, because I don't know the right words, but I was still trying to, I appreciate what we're trying to do is, if we give away something in a buffer, we want to get something different back to somehow keep us whole. And that's what I was looking for, and I didn't really see it, not in a way that I could understand.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be, one more thing, if we had tons of upland that you could add on, I could do the math. I understood that, but you can't do that. So I'm just trying to learn as much as anything about what would a true mitigation look like in this situation. I think you've done a wonderful job of designing the property and minimizing any possible issues. I'm just trying to learn as much as anything.
Yeah, well, without doing something off-site, like I said, it's, what 90% of the house is, I think that's what Jay said, is inside the buffer area. So, unless you move the house further out, then, you're just, I mean, that's just what you have to work with. So I think Jay's done an incredible job of just trying to reduce the impacts as much as possible. And, doing one of these assessments inside a buffer is something new that we're having to deal with as consultants. So, thinking about what's happening within the wetland and what's happening within the buffer area, they overlap, but, there's different things going on within each of those areas. So, yeah, I think, I think given the situation, I mean, to have only two of those functions change, I think it's pretty remarkable, considering the complexity of kind of ecosystems.
Thank you. I think you answered my question very well.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions?
I have an opportunity to speak once more before you guys.
Okay. You have any other questions, please? We know what it's like. Are there any proponents who'd like to talk about something? Okay, how about proponents? Opponents? All right, if you'd like to speak again, you have the opportunity.
As I know the procedure very well, if we find ourselves in any sort of situation where we're on the fence, I request a continuance on it currently right now. So.
That's kind of a gray area there.
I know there is, but I won't have the opportunity to request it again.
Well, yeah, you could have one.
So, unless you have any other questions, thank you for your time.
Oh,
I
question. Yeah, go ahead. So I noticed you have lights. Are those considered fully shielded lights?
Yeah, they're night sky.
Super.
Yep.
Yeah, even 2,700 degree Kelvin.
Kept it low and kept it down and.
Good.
Yeah, no,
And you get an apron. this will be.
Let's keep the record open for just a second more. Okay, so we have a couple different applications in front of us. I think, well, I believe I understand the purpose. Is there any commissioner who feels like it's gray, or maybe it is important that we keep them separate, or would we be okay considering them together?
If I can speak to that, Chair, I believe the applicant, by segregating the applications, would like for each application to be considered on its own merits as meeting the criteria.
I thought maybe by keeping the record open, and then coming back after hearing the comments, we could put it back to the applicant as to whether we could do it or not. If you're thinking that's not a good idea, we'll just consider them separate.
It's possible that the commission could condition any approval on something having to do with the other application, but I think it's really up to the applicant to request to consolidate them because they have separate records right now.
Right.
The records are not the same, and so if you kept the record open for this one, it would not it would not merge the records together. These are separate records. Is my understanding. This is not a consolidated application. Correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Just to the nature of it, I think it may be best to keep them separate.
Okay.
Mainly because the second is for a separate reduction, which would only further our ability to reduce wetland buffer impact. What the third application for the shed may have, as conditional use may have impact to your decision.
Okay. Always looking for an opportunity to consolidate, but don't want to jeopardize any position. Understood. Okay, with that in mind, do you have anything further you'd like to add for this?
Christine? Oh, good, thank you.
Thank you. We'll close the public record then and move to our deliberation.
I would say, I think it's very comprehensive. I think they've thought of many angles. And trying to protect the tree and the trees in the canopy, I think was their main objective, and I think that's my objective also. We can always replant underneath those trees, but replacing something 80 or 100 feet tall, which many of those trees are, is that's an impossible task. So I think that the wetland work that was done was excellent, and I think the presentation today was top notch.
Okay. Other concerns, other questions people have would like to bring up to?
Yeah.
Wait. Go ahead.
If that's to me, I second what was just said. I appreciate the comprehensive approach that Jay brought to us.
And I would just say that as we started into the conversation with the applicants, I would like to see some kind of condition where there's no gutters or some other runoff remains on the site.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I have notes on here for actually two additions. One was the no herbicide, pesticide, and then somehow to reconsider how much water has to go to the city storm system.
Yeah, great.
You know, Jay, I really think you've done I mean, it seems like you read our minds or something. Really, very well done. I wanted to say this site alternative analysis that you did, where you shifted things around, and I like that. Very good.
I tried to do
Jay, I'm sorry to cut you off. I gotta be super careful here. Okay, so we have a couple conditions. Are there other concerns, or are we ready to for a motion here? All right, let's put it out.
I would, as we did before, look at what the original three recommended motions were and then add on. I mean, one mistake, I'll get to that.
Great. Oh, you know, the one thing I would say is when you were talking about the roof is, let's just be super clear about how that water's gonna come off, that it is, there's gutters, it just naturally comes off. Okay, sorry to muddy things up here a little bit. We had said a couple things when you were talking about. This. We had said the water comes off with maybe the exception of entrances and exits. As I recall, how do we want to? How specifically we want to get there? How that water comes off the roofs and where we could see some sort of drainage.
So if we were to say simply runoff is to be made on site through natural runoff from the structure, would that be that?
Feels like it would to me.
Yeah, I think so. They'll need some protections over the doors, you know, the entryways to the home. But that just will be diverted onto the side, but stay on the property and there wouldn't be any.
Yeah, I think Jay mentioned like rain chain, we could do that.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Rain chain. Well, the rain chains come down from the side, whereas you need to divert it over the front and back doors. So to a rain chain area, possibly something like that, but yeah.
That broad language would probably
suffice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but we're cool with not being too restrictive, just that if the water gets. Yeah. Anyway, I'd like to make a motion, that we approve, application CU 25-02, with the following conditions. One, erosion control measures shall be installed by the applicant and approved by the city prior to the start of work. Two, the city shall be notified no less than 48 hours prior to on-site disturbance. Three, the use of motorized equipment shall be limited to the hours between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. per municipal code section 8.16. Four, there should be no use of herbicides or pesticides on location. And number five, that water from the roof structure shall be kept on site to, I guess, naturally just drain into the well, something like that.
Sounds pretty good. Do we have a second?
I second.
Okay, any further discussion? Tessa, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Matusek,
Yes.
Commissioner Moore,
Yes.
Commissioner Bates,
Yes.
Commissioner Sinclair,
Yes.
Commissioner Wade,
Yes.
Chair Newton.
Yes. Okay, C 2502 is approved. We move to our next item. U 2503 and SR 2501, Jake Wolloff, on behalf of Eric Purdy for conditional use and setback reduction permit to build an accessory structure in a wetland buffer area. CU 2503 and SR 2501, Jake Wolloff of Polivana Design LLC on behalf of Eric Purdy for the construction of an accessory structure in an inventoried wetland buffer area. The project is located at 196 Ross Lane and is in the residential medium density R2 zoning district. The application will be reviewed against the criteria of municipal code 17.102, wetland overlay zone, and 17.86 conditional uses, and 17.64 setback reduction. Does anyone object to the jurisdiction of the planning commission to hear this matter at this time? Does any commission member believe he or she has a conflict of interest or a personal bias? Oh, that's right. I'll put you right up here and do a push-up. You're gonna put in 2 or 3 applications. You're gonna have to do a push-up.
I have a conflict of interest and I believe that it's right there.
Okay. For the audience. Make you work for this. buddy.
Okay. Get my steps in.
The whole spiel again. Does any, we talked about. Has any commission member had any ex parte contact or made a site visit? May we have the staff report?
Yes, this application is for the construction of an 80 square foot accessory structure in conjunction with a 2-story residence in a wetland buffer area on an undeveloped parcel at the intersection of Ross Lane and Spruce Street. This application accompanies conditional use permit C number 2402, which was just approved with conditions. This contingent on the approval of that application. Moving into the applicable criteria for the wetland overlay zone requirements. The staff comment is due to the configuration of the map boundaries, there are no significant opportunities for development outside the woodland buffer area. This application will not change the size of the residence proposed by C number 2502 or other features such as off-street parking, porches, or walkways. It does request a reduction of front yard setback facing Ross Lane from 15 feet to 10 feet in order to accommodate the addition of an 8 by 10 foot accessory structure on the northeastern portion of the property within the woodland buffer. This will allow the total developed square footage within the buffer area to remain within the 1,000 square foot maximum allowed within the wetland buffer by CDMC 17102. Moving into conditional uses. The staff comment is subject property is zoned R2, residential medium density and a single family dwelling, and its accessory structures are permitted in that zone. Ross Lane is residential in nature, and the proposed development is consistent with other single family dwellings in the immediate area. The development is small in scale and will not generate a significant amount of traffic or demand on public infrastructure. Moving into setback reduction. The staff comment is that the total building coverage of the subject property will be 1,136 square feet of the 5,000 square foot lot, or approximately 23%. No significant impacts to views or solar access for adjoining property owners have been identified as a result of this proposal. The application's intent best fits criterion 4G, protection of a wetland or wetland buffer area, as the intent is to reduce the amount of structure that would be constructed within a wetland buffer and limit the total square footage within the property's mapped buffer boundary to 1,000 square feet of building coverage. The proposed setback reduction will move the planned residence 5 feet closer to Ross Lane and its unmarked intersection with Spruce Street. However, no significant traffic impacts are anticipated as the roadway has not been developed to the full width of the 50-foot right of way, and there are no foreseeable plans to develop the roadway beyond its current extent at this time. And that concludes the staff report.
Okay, thank you. This time we'll call for public testimony. Pertinent criteria to be considered are staff reports and listed on the criteria sheets on the meeting page of the city's website. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed towards those criteria or other criteria in the comprehensive plan or municipal code which the person testifying believes apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal based on that issue. Prior to the conclusion of the initial evidentiary hearing, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional testimony, arguments, or evidence regarding the application. The planning commission shall grant such requests by continuing the public hearing or leaving the record open for additional written testimony, arguments, or evidence. Persons who testify shall first receive recognition from the chair, state their full name and mailing address, and if appearing in a representative capacity, identify whom they represent. That's a representation by the applicant.
Yes. Jay Orloff, Tool Design, PO Box 563, Canopy, Oregon 97110, representing Vertigan. As noted in the staff report, we have 2 items: setback reduction and additional use permit for a 80 by 10 shed in the wetland buffer. Our setback reduction is twofold: one, to reduce the impact to the wetland buffer, but to also allow the 8 by 10 shed to fall within the under the 1,000 square foot requirement. The setback reduction, as noted in our previous presentation, will allow us a little bit of flexibility, move forward and back of the structure due to the root structures, to try to avoid as much as possible. The 8 by 10 shed is requested for seasonal equipment, bikes, and other things that would not be normally stored inside the residence. We had originally intended to have a 2-car garage on site, but that would put us well over 1,000 square feet. So we're looking for some concession to have at least some storage outside of the homes. One thing, the shed is to be supported on no impact diamond piers, natural pathway to the open entrance.
So by natural pathway,
Gravel pathway.
so but that wasn't included in
No, it was not included in the.
the area that's
No,
being.
whether it's, you know, I would even be willing to just let them make a deer path to it. We don't need any hardscape or even gravel.
You're getting pretty close to the 400 square feet of additional area.
Oh, yeah, it will put us in that, it will still put us under that. I believe I have a.
What?
Thank you. Yeah, our total structure area would be 991 and our hardscape area would be 390 or 382. So we're still under that 1,000.
Does that 382 then include gravel walkway to the shed?
No, that was under the assumption that we'd have a deer path to it.
Okay. Other questions?
It would help me understand, you've said there's gonna be, you've fit the extra 80 square feet for the shed by removing the house, but you've also said, well, you're gonna use some flexibility and the house may or may not come as far south as it is as calculated right now. Can you explain
We
how
have
much we're
9
talking?
We have 9 square feet.
Exactly.
So, you know, if we get the setback reduction, I'm gonna pull that house all the way up to the front as I can. And if we run into issues with foundation, we'll work around it. But again, that is sort of why I separated these two, to allow you to judge some.
And I would just note, so really what we're doing is we're just trading space here. This isn't actually improving the wetland, but I understand the utility of at least wanting a shed to put a few things.
That is exactly what it is.
Yeah.
We're requesting the setback reduction, to allow us to have the square footage to allow. for a shed.
Okay.
Yeah, I was kind of gonna go down that path a little bit as well, because I recognize the interrelation between the two of three different proposals. You know, so it really doesn't seem to me that it helps the buffer that much, but talk to me more about the tree protection, because you told us that if you had the flexibility, you might be able to do things that were better for the trees and root systems that were there.
The flexibility of location of the house is going to give us, only going to give us flexibility for location of the piers. The trees, we're not gonna save any trees, they're all within.
The flexibility with.
Flexibility, I mean, we may have a root from the either the 50 or the 48 inch spruce that's running right in front of the pier. That ability to move forward a little bit may put us outside that boundary.
And can you move a pier forward without moving the footprint of the house? Does it have that
We do have some forward back movement. Corners are kind of set. If we have to take one out of the corner, we have to cantilever. So that's sort of the give take in all of this. And not, you know, we're kind of running blind because we don't know what's there until we put a shovel in the ground. My ultimate goal was to make it as least impactful as possible, so that, say, if we do hit or come across a route that, the arborist may be able to determine that it's outside, far enough away from the tree, that the tree will, you know, send out additional shoots if we have to.
No longer structural, it's.
Yeah. Right. This was a challenge. This is probably the smallest foundation I've ever done.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Other presentations by the applicant?
I'll just say something really quick. To Commissioner Morris's points, the utility of the shed is requested because we have lost the 2-car garage, even 1-car garage. We don't need the parking, we don't need that for our cars. What we're looking for is wagons, bikes. We have a 7-year-old daughter, or sorry, 7-month-old daughter at home that we're quickly learning requires a lot of extra stuff.
This isn't nearly big enough.
And losing that garage has forced us to push our HVAC into the house, our water heater into the house, so we've lost the storage there. So really, we are just trying to get a small shed for these kind of outdoor beach seasonal items, as Jay mentioned. So that's our goal here. Thank you.
Anyone else on your team? Okay, any other proponents? Any opponents? Final words? Okay. We all good closing the record. Should we go to the version? We'll close the record then. Who'd like to start?
I think I'm fine with the proposal. I think I would want us to put a condition in that there would be no gravel laid to the shed, so we wouldn't be adding anything more in terms of park space.
Do we need that? That's the sound also on this.
I guess we probably should, even though I think it's built into the other approval.
Yeah.
Why not?
Go ahead.
I would recommend adding the same conditions that you put on the previous one.
Yeah.
In addition to, there are 2 separate applications, and so that way we're kind of changing. They probably will not submit that initial plan, so I think it would be smart to include conditions that the previous one on this one.
So it's either you, Mike, or Aaron, who's not electing this. I think that's you, Mike.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, so we have the same conditions with the exception of the gravel. Or lack of. Okay, other comments? Everybody feel another good application? It's my thought, I think.
Yeah, mine too. I think that also maybe add to the motion that the water runoff from that roof also stay on site.
Great catch. Anyone else? Let's who rock that last motion. You wanna?
Yeah.
Take it away, Les. I was actually hoping that by keeping my head down.
I saw you look down.
I thought, yeah. Never works the way I want it. Yes, I'd be happy to do that. So I make a motion that we approve CU 25-03 and SR 25-01, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, erosion control measures shall be installed by the applicant and approved by the city prior to the start of work. 2, the city shall be notified no less than 48 hours prior to on-site disturbance. 3, use of motorized equipment shall be limited to the hours between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. for the municipal code, section 8.16. Number 4, there should be no use of herbicides or pesticides on the site. Number 5, water, I can't even get this right, but water from the structure roofs shall remain on site to naturally drain into the wetland. And then number 6, that there will be no gravel pathway to the utility shed.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Tessa, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Morris,
Yes.
Commissioner Matusek,
Yes.
Commissioner Bates,
Yes.
Commissioner Sinclair,
Yes.
Commissioner Wade,
Yes.
Chair Newton.
Yes. CU 2503 and SR 2501 are complete. We're an hour and a half for our last break. How do people feel about a short break here before we move to our next item? Good. All right, let's reconvene at 9 o'clock. Okay, let's continue. All right, next item is B25-01. Stephen Gerber on behalf of, I'll do my best here. Neuron Curie for variance to off-street parking requirement. B25-01, Stephen Gerber of Gerber Architects on behalf of Neuron Curie. Okay, correct me please later, I'm sorry. For variance to off-street parking requirements at 280 North Hemlock Street, tax lot 1602, map 15101 19DD, and in the limited commercial C1 zoning district. The application will be reviewed against the criteria of the municipal code 17.90 variances. Does anyone object to the jurisdiction of the planning commission to hear this matter at this time? Does any commission member believe he or she has a conflict of interest or a personal bias? Has any commission member had any ex parte contacts or made a site visit? Can we have the staff report, please?
Yes, the applicant proposes a reduction in the number of required off-street parking spaces in conjunction with planned redevelopment of a former auto repair garage at 280 North Hemlock Street. The proposed use is a convenience store with a second floor residential unit, which is a permitted use in the limited commercial C1 zone. Municipal Code 1768 off-street parking requires one parking space per 400 square feet of gross floor area for retail and office uses in downtown. An additional parking space will be required for the dwelling unit. After the proposed conversion to a convenience store, the subject property will have approximately 4,320 square feet of commercial space, including the store, kitchen, office, and stockroom. The minimum number of spaces required by code is 12. However, according to the site plans, a total of 8 spaces will be able to be provided due to the site's area constraints. Moving into the applicable criteria, which is 1790.070 variances for off-street parking and loading facilities. The staff comment is that application materials describe the planned function of the convenience store and accompanying residential unit. It is intended to serve both pedestrian and vehicular traffic, focusing on visitors within the downtown area and not intended to attract traffic from Highway 101. The materials state the intended use will attract customers for short periods of time. However, no specifics are provided regarding anticipated customer volumes or vehicles per hour. No specific details are provided regarding potential impacts of traffic safety hazards. The proposed lot is not dissimilar to other nearby off-street parking areas on Hemlock Street, such as the one immediately south of Bruce's Candy Kitchen. The planned parking layout will use a single direction traffic flow with an entrance on the north and exit on the south of the property. Parking stalls will be angled at 70 degrees and a driving aisle width of 16 feet will be present. A 5-foot landscaping buffer will be placed between the driving aisle and the public sidewalk on South Hemlock Street. And an additional 5-foot sidewalk will be located between the parking stalls and the front of the store. And that concludes the staff report.
Is there any additional correspondence?
There was some information regarding Oregon Department of Environmental Quality requirements that was sent out to the planning commission earlier today. That has to do with the property's former use as a gas station and some potential work with that agency that may have to be done during a redevelopment of the property.
Are you aware if the applicant has been given that information? No. No, okay, thank you. So we'll call for public testimony.
It was posted online.
At what time?
What's your name? Okay, that's fine.
Okay, that's something we're gonna come back to. This time we'll call for public testimony. The pertinent criteria to be considered are noted in the staff reports and listed on the criteria sheets on the meeting page of the city's website. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed toward those criteria or other criteria in the comprehensive plan and municipal code which the person testifying believes apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal based on that issue. Prior to the conclusion of the initial evidence you're hearing, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional testimony, arguments, or evidence regarding the application. The Planning Commission shall grant such requests by continuing the public hearing or leaving the record open for additional written testimony, arguments, or evidence. Persons who testify shall first receive recognition from the chair, state their full name and mailing address, and if appearing in a representative capacity, identify whom they represent. Is there a presentation by way?
I'm here representing Red Farm Incorporated for a parking variance on the proposed lot, which is on North Kennedy. It's an old auto shop, and we are aware of that. So the DEQ is part of the conversation that we've been having, even though we haven't gotten that notification. We are aware that that might be something that needs to take care of. What we're asking for is the variance on the number from 12 to 8. We started out with the history, they purchased it, and they were looking at trying to use the existing shop. And that's just not gonna be possible. They were gonna put in a typical center market with the standard of their layout, which my understanding is you guys did receive all those documents, which is why I'm not presenting them on. What the original proposed layout was to add storage area and do a 45-degree parking, which only gave us 6. So we were struggling with the parking structure, like how many can we get in there? So post pre-application meeting, the layout, they moved the storefront elevation from the west, they pushed it back. They looked at 45, 60, 70-degree parking layouts. How could we try to get to the 12? 70 degrees gave us the 8, and we were able to add that second storage, which would be the people who are actually running the store. The future, like, I know that we're ending up, the next piece is like Jay was doing was separating the application. There's other ones coming. This is just for the variance on the parking based on the design layout. Like, how can we get as many parking as we can? Part of the structure layout is also storage, so there wouldn't be like pedestrian people for that square footage. And so those are pretty much, this is just looking at can we get from the 12 to the 8 and move forward with that and all the other, we're aware there can be other applications for other parks. This is just to get a parking variance.
Are you ready for, are you finished?
Yes.
Okay, other questions?
Will you have additional parking for the residents in the second floor?
Their parking, I believe, is in the back.
There will be additional for them in the back then?
That.
And I think the one required parking is part of the 8.
It's part of the 8, I believe. Yes.
I believe it's in the front.
For the site plan, there's nothing in the back, everything's just in the front.
That's my fault. Because there's a back easement, right? Through all the different conversations and variations when you're looking at it. In my head, there was a back area, but it's in the front.
But I think there's a back area in terms of what it is right now,
Yes.
before they switched. So maybe when they were doing the original footprint, before they put in the addition and things like that, so that could have been what you're thinking.
Yeah, and I
So
do
now,
have, and I'm looking at the ones that have been submitted, like, and there's the final one here, which is the 8 that are in the front at an angle, so that we can get more than 6, which would be on the straight.
So 7 are dedicated to the customers, and 1 is dedicated to the resident then, is that correct?
Along the same lines, have you done any, research into alternative parking for that long-term spot for the resident, such as purchasing a spot in some of the other parking areas or on-street parking?
No. For paid parking, like they can purchase a parking spot.
Some of the, lots that are privately owned and you can, in fact, right across the street from you, is it possible?
Yeah, there's a, yeah.
Yes,
Okay. No, I didn't know that was an option.
yeah,
For the residents to open up one more for the customers.
yes,
Okay.
yeah, because that's a long-term spot which would be occupied at
That's
the
a
time.
nice solution.
There's also on-street parking available in the area that would not be right from the business. I have one other question, and that's, in regards to the calculation for the hardscape and softscape area.
I'm sorry.
The hardscape landscaping area, which is 20% of the 10,000. Works out to be 2,000. By my calculation, you have 1,912 listed on your plan, so we're a little short there. Do you feel that there's areas that you can make up for that additional 88 square feet of landscape requirement?
Yeah, we can find room for that. I mean, and I need to apologize to you. This is usually my husband's area of expertise, so I am filling in as, I'm usually in the back. And stuff. So I'm a little like, okay, I've been watching very diligently and paying attention. So those are questions that in the conversations that I've heard, and the client's more than willing to work with whatever is needed to make it happen. And so that's why that offsite awesome. If we need to do something with the landscaping where we move it, add it, and the hardscape, which also is gonna be part of runoff, we're willing to do it. Yeah.
I think my main concern is the lack of data on traffic. I don't see enough information here for us to know whether it's reasonable to reduce the number of parking spaces, given the anticipated traffic that would come in and out. This is gonna be a lot of vehicle trips.
So you would be requesting like a traffic study?
Right.
Was 1,500 square feet is a pretty good sized apartment. Were other configurations considered? Say, and I'm just making this up, I don't know what common load factors might be on something like this based on the design of the building. But maybe it's 3 500 foot or 2 750 foot. Or with load, maybe it's 2 600 foot apartments. The idea being there's presumably more than one employee, it'd be great to get multiple units up there. Had that been explored at all? Or do you think it's a possibility up on top to have more than?
I think the design stuff is definitely optional. Like at this point, we're just moving forward and my understanding, like, it's a kind of now, don't get into design review because that would be like the full blown stuff. I would think yes, it would be mine. It's kind of a logical thing if you want to put multiple up, you would like that. My understanding is that those people who run the store live above the store. So yeah, that is what it is for. That's the model of our client is they like it to be kind of family. This is not just a store where we open and then close and then leave. We are here, we stay, we're part of the community. That's what that is for. It's not a rental.
I see. Okay.
That, I mean, it's supposed to be the residence, so we wouldn't have that kind of turnover of people with renting, and that's not the objective. Or the plan that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Is that the first one that Center Market's doing with residents? Cause I haven't seen any others that have that.
There's one that they're working on with right now in McMinnville, and they're working on one on the Thomas. So it is the mode that the people that are running them now are in the vicinity of the store that don't have the ability, they box places that don't have the ability to go up because of the prior, like, the grandfathering in. And so those don't, but like the one in Dallas is next to it. So it's not about that. And in this case, it was looking at where we do with the footprint and go.
So that's their business model is to have.
It's to have the family, yeah, because it's a family business, all of them are, they're all the same family. So, I understand that being a family business person myself.
For sure.
Yeah. And it's like with the traffic study, I completely understand your concern, especially if it's like a market. The idea is it's not pulling traffic, it's not a destination of somebody flying down the road. It's like, we come to Cannon Beach, I don't know where we're going, well, race here, I came to the beach to come to Cannon Beach. Oh, I don't don't go to the Cannon Beach to get to the mini mart. And so this being that destination place, we didn't consider that traffic study as a priority because it's not pulling massive traffic. The people it's tending to serve are the people who come here to stay here for vacation or live here. That's who the market is here to serve, is the people who visit this town.
And most of those people drive to the store.
Yeah, there's a lot.
So that's the problem, that there still is traffic that needs to come and go from that site, and those people do need a place to park.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I have major problems with this entire application, and just to add to something I remember reading in there, it essentially throws out the buzzword affordable housing for this family or whoever's going to live in this apartment, and then goes on to say that they're essentially going to provide security for the downtown area, which I mean, that baffles me more than anything else in this entire process that you've undertaken here. So the family works at the store by day and is town security by night. I mean, I'm just having a hard time with this application for many reasons. That's probably the biggest one, though.
No, I was not implying that they would be policing. If something happens to their store, they're equipped to respond. They're not coming from another town. That's what I meant. They would not be policing anything. They're just close to their property, and if something does happen, they're quickly there to address it. That's all, not policing. I apologize if I gave you that impression.
Any other questions?
So it seemed to me that rather than traffic like you alluded to from 101 coming into town for this, the whole process that the store's operating on is really quick turnaround. In fact, there's a couple of places where they talk about, or you talked about, you know, how long the checkout line can be to make it work. So one of the things that I've noticed in Cannon Beach is that any parking spot is fair game, and as soon as people park, they're headed to the beach and you can't find them. Have you thought about how you're going to keep your 8 little parking spots only being used for the purpose that you need it to? That, or are you going to end up with beachgoers parked in your spots and they're gone? And then you start impacting parking, on-street parking with customers, and that starts to snowball a little bit. I don't know anybody else that's trying to operate exactly on the same business model that you are.
I would imagine signage would be like parking for this place only, because that's really the only legality that we can use. I mean, it's a public space, they are public, but you can put those signages up. I understand your concern. I see that, yeah.
I think it'll happen.
It happened to me today in front of the candy store. Like, I was trying to park and I literally saw somebody get out of all their bags in front of the candy store and walk down the road. And I'm like, wait, because I came early to see them. And so I understand what you're doing.
And this is a light.
Yeah.
Other question?
Question, yes. Have you begun to work with DEQ on possible design restrictions?
That information for DEQ, we have not yet.
Mike, I'd like to go back to the question around DEQ. Toward the end, we'll keep the record open, but I want to come back to that question at the end of the open record period.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, thank you. You'll have another opportunity to say. Are there any other presentations by the applicant, or were you, okay? Thank you. Are there presentations by proponents? Are there presentations by opponents? Okay, would you like to come back up? Anything you'd like to add?
He's watching, so he said 1,500 is the max for the housing. I'm not sure of that. Yes, taking landscaping out of the garbage area, and 1,500 is max housing. He's trying to answer the questions that he's hearing from you to me to make sure we can get you what you should answer. So that was the question. There were questions about and hardscape landscape. Okay, and then DEQ.
And then DEQ.
No, he's aware of the DEQ, he said that he's aware and he's working. Like, I'm
He's
not sure
aware.
that the DEQ question.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so, and Missy, I'll look for any guardrails you want to add to what I'm about to say in terms of just making sure we handle, the DEQ question as well as we can. I want the record to be open on this because I want you to have the opportunity to respond before we close it.
Okay.
The question at hand is whether DEQ applies, the situation with DEQ applies to the, request in front of us. And somewhat, not somewhat, certainly part of that is how that information is entered into the record. I think we need to be very careful about, consideration of something that may not have had full purview by the applicant. Full opportunity to review. I'd like to discuss it between ourselves. If we think it's something we want to consider, I'll look for the applicant's input, and our counsel as well, in terms of how to move forward with this. Missy, do you have anything you'd like to add to what I'm trying to touch on, which is kind of gray a little bit for me?
The criteria that apply to this variance application are really only found in 1790.070. I know that the application included more materials than only the materials needed to demonstrate compliance with that, which generated a lot of the questions tonight. But the situation with DEQ consent decree, that evidence, I guess, is only relevant if it is relevant to making the determination that's under 1790.090. That's how I would characterize it.
My inclination is we should not discuss that as a part of this decision, to be safe. Jay, do you have?
I agree. I think what's in front of us is the parking reduction.
Yeah.
DEQ and anything along that is gonna fall into the building department and the building permit application. And it's not privy to what we're discussing or what's in front of the application here today.
Let me just interject. My intentions were not to question their ability to get through DEQ approval. Is the timing correct for us to consider this variance? And it is yet again a variance, and there is question is hardship. And right now, I don't know that they can demonstrate hardship because they've got so much work to do before that question is resolved. So that's it. It's just a question of timing. And it is very relevant to, our consideration of a variance.
I think it may be relevant to our consideration of what's here before us tonight, but I think we could also get into discussion of how it's presented to the body. And that is a whole nother conversation that I think is an area we just don't want to touch.
No, again, and the question was simply, have you begun working with DEQ? And that, then the answer is no. So there's a lot of work to be done there. And should we consider a parking variance here when we're not sure that the design that they've got is going to go through? I'm not opposed to the idea of this project. I just want to make sure that we're aware of the timing.
So to dovetail on what Mike's saying, if we allow the variance and then their plans change to something else, or they can provide even more parking or can't provide the 8 spots, might be a little premature to consider this at this time.
Yeah, you're brought up a point. One of the things that would happen is if, for example, if this was to get approved, not saying that's the direction or what have you, approved or denied, but if it was approved and then later on, they came back and they dealt with DEQ and now this plan was needing to be changed in some fashion, it would no longer be valid and they would have to come back and request, if a variance is still needed, they would have to come back or it was a site plan, they would have to go back to design review. So there are things, and there's things throughout the process from a staff perspective, both planning and building, that when we get to those points, we're gonna be asking you to condition those types of approvals with those types of conditions on it at that time. So I think there are some fallback positions that, hey, if they were to receive it, they got an understanding, they can go start doing more work, knowing that, because the applicant is very aware of the situation. We've made that clear from the get-go, they understand that. But there are some options there that I think could be dealt with if that was indeed the case, that all of a sudden they go there and now we gotta redo this because we can't do the plans that we originally submitted.
And we are either approving or not approving based on what is submitted here today.
That's correct.
So if it does change, that immediately triggers.
That would do it as well. The other comments that I had that I'm not quite sure, you know, obviously there's a significant amount of pedestrian traffic in this area, as well as vehicular at certain times of the year. And, you know, having the two access points, does it make sense to have one? You know, those are other things that should be taken into consideration in any type of, I think, traffic study or anything like that, because those are public safety concerns that I think should be in the plan commission's mind when considering the parking variance request.
Okay.
What
Any
is the
other-
delivery of what we have here? To see where we end up.
Delivery in terms of when you
The
say what we
packet.
have here in the packet.
packet that was provided by the applicant.
By the, okay, then I'm okay with that. The record is still open. You have the opportunity to say anything if you'd like to before we close it.
Yes, please. We did get a DEQ letter prior to the purchase of the property. All that soil has been removed from the site. However, there might be some on the adjacent property. They will remove any bad soil that happens to be found on the adjacent site. Anything that is found will be encapsulated in a mono slab, if possible. They did look at the alternative layout, rotating the plan for a 90-degree park, and they were still only able to come up with 8 parking slots without a garbage enclosure. So as he thinks you're these are the answers he could provide for this.
Okay, great, thank you. Any final questions before we close the record? No? Okay, we'll close the record and move to deliberation.
I feel like I just don't have the information that I would need right now. You'd say that I could find the criteria of hardship or that there wasn't a safety concern. At this point, I don't understand where we would see a hardship for this site myself.
Yeah, under no circumstance do I see any chance of a hardship with this application.
Agreed.
I'm not prepared to agree with it either at this point, but I think further information, one, being a traffic study, is definitely going to be to our advantage to understand what's going on. But in regards to the overall design, looking at the site, I don't know how they get more than 8 spots in here. But I think making sure it's 8 dedicated to the service and moving that 1 spot for long-term offsite is something that needs to be considered. As for a layout, 1 in, 1 out is probably the easiest way to get people moving through here. Again, by experience and looking at it, and then also looking in regards to Les's concern, our closest model is Mariner. Mariner has 8 spots, but it's also competing with the post office.
But it's also directly next to city parking, which has tons of space. So
That's
to
true.
me, that is not a comparable scenario.
I think again, that study, traffic study would help clear up a lot of indecision.
One thing that kind of concerns me is you've got a one in and a one out, we've got heavy traffic on the sidewalk, all the time, so you got people pulling in, you got people pulling out, you got people walking on the sidewalk. What's that gonna look like, you know?
Well, that's where that traffic study would come in, that exit would probably be required to be a right turn only. You know, to head south on Hemlock. And trying to get into it, and again, the traffic study is something that's really gonna tell us the most information. On those flows and ins and outs and how it's gonna work. Think something that's not usable to be coming into the room.
The other thing I like about it is they're providing housing for their employees, you know. And it comes at the cost of 4 parking spots, but we've got a housing shortage here for employees, workers housing in Cannon Beach that is addressed.
But I think that it actually doesn't address worker housing in the way that it could. So as Clay alluded to, it doesn't add housing, it's simply status quo because you've added workers and housed those workers. Add, helping with affordable housing would be to actually add units beyond what was required to.
But adding units adds parking spots.
And that's our perennial issue in Cannon Beach.
Right, well, my point is that at least away, you know, from the worker housing and by putting the housing, on site rather than just putting a store there and then hiring people that need housing in Cannon Beach.
I have to say, I have a little bit of a concern with the fact that this is very close to a formula food chain. This is, and I appreciate that it's a family owned, but Central Market is a very large chain and it's one step away from formula food chains, which is what our comprehensive plan disallows. But that's not the question before us right now.
Right. There lots of problems with this and we can talk about it all night and come up with a bunch of different ways for them to tweak their next application and give them all sorts of advice on how to figure out where the off-street parking is and different parking lots, and none of that's before us. Do we approve this variance as written?
Are there other people who'd like to contribute, ideas? That almost sounded like a motion. Commissioner Matusik.
I move to deny the variance as written.
Second,
I'll second.
further discussion. Tessa, we call roll.
Commissioner Moore,
Yes.
Commissioner Matusik,
Yes.
Commissioner Bates,
Yes.
Commissioner Sinclair,
Yes.
Commissioner Wade,
Yes.
Commissioner Orloff,
Yes.
Chairman.
Yes. Request for variance is denied for B 2511. Let's move to our 3 report.
We had 2 hazard trees removed, 355 Deer Place. And this, I'm pretty sure there was a replanting requirement. And there was required to replant 2 trees.
Questions about the tree report? Okay, let's move to good of the order. Missy, I know you can't talk about this, and I brought it up last time.
Are you talking about Robbins?
Good guess. How can we learn more about what's going on there? The idea being a little along the lines of what we talked about. We'd like to understand how courts, our city council, LUBA are looking at our decisions so that we can better our processes.
Are you, You can't mention anything on this one, right?
I can't represent the city.
Yeah,
on
yeah.
it, and so I think, but someone at my firm could give an update. Bill probably could,
That'd be great.
perhaps the next meeting, it would be by Zoom.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Because he is really on glide path, right out of here.
Yeah.
Tell them we're not letting them out.
The only things I can mention, I know there's, that there was something going to, the, circuit that was decided, and, because there's like two cases, there's the one on the access, and then there's the one on the house, so there's still two, court cases that are out there. The decision that we made to deny was upheld by council, and that decision was taken to LUMA. And with that, there were a number of different actions, I could be more prepared, I know Bill knew this better than I am, and the firm does, because they've been kind of involved in it, but I could give a better, let me have the opportunity to be more prepared for next week to give you a better answer on that. And I certainly could do that. Or else if we need Bill to do a short little something, you know, we can get that answer to you. But it's still out there, there's still litigation. Eventually, at some point in time, something's going to the Supreme Court, with regards to the LUMA decisions. There's possibility that it get back to us again to hear it at some point in time. That would be my expectation. Timing of that, I don't have any idea. I think we're talking about a little length of time period before we know exactly some of what those answers are gonna be. So it's still a litigation process, both in court and then potentially, I think one of the decisions looked at legal was to remand. And I think that was related to the structure and the foundation or the retaining wall situation. So you may be seeing that, you know, at that point in time.
Have you guys had a chance to talk at all about the larger conversation we had just around reporting and talking with us about the decision in terms of process?
With regards to
last meeting, we talked a little bit about all of them together. You and your team starting together to come together and talk about how the record's built, how we were talking about decisions.
We have not had the time to do that with the move and everything like that. That's actually kind of sorry to, you know, not as though we can't get back to you on that. There's been a lot of other stuff going on, and I apologize. But we can talk about that. Like I told you, some of that's internal, just in some of our stuff. And then with regards to working with Melissa a little bit, there'll probably be some additional input that we can give you in terms of developing the record and things like that. But for the most part, unless you guys have, I know there's, again, that there's been some situations from time to time. We've been fairly consistent. We're probably gonna do things, you know, pretty much the way we are. But anytime we can find something out procedurally or process wise, we're open to improvement just because it helps us defend our cases better.
Yeah, and I want to be clear from my perspective. It's not just based on one case where things didn't go well, because you're right. For the most part, it goes really well. I think for me, a lot of it has to do when we get these big packages, these 900-page packages, of just understanding how stuff is put in there. So I don't have to go through every page again. I know that, you know, if it's, however it's cataloged, whether it's exhibit, you know, date, however you're naming it, I can just rip through that, having had the conversation about how you guys are cataloging, which we just haven't had before. I don't totally understand how that system is set up. And once I have a better understanding of how it's set up, I'll be able to move more efficiently through that information. And then, you know, again, it's only happened a couple times. One maybe nefariously, one's an accident where someone slipped something into our process and changed the design of what was put in. I will never forget this one project. I'm not going to give you the names, but one project was very evident to me that it was some sneaky gamesmanship to change the design, and we just didn't catch it. Until the lawyers came back later and saying that's not what was approved, and we're like, well, no, there were so many papers, we couldn't keep up. So
Yeah, we get flooded
understanding
with
that,
documents, that's for sure.
yeah,
And
like it's crazy.
I don't anticipate that lessening, especially like with the shoreline stabilizations and things like that. That stuff's just gonna get more and more because people are seeing that what types of decisions we're making. They get the burden of proof is on them and they have that one opportunity to come to you. And if it gets continued, you see what happens. We're gonna get a lot of documentation, whether it's something like that or others. I think, we're just, and so, yeah, it's a challenge from the standpoint of staying on top of it,
Yeah.
no doubt about
And
it.
I think for me, it's a defensive position to what's happened in just the complexity of what we're dealing with. We're dealing with the most challenging lots that are allowed. We're
Yeah.
dealing with really complicated issues
Totally.
that we are gonna get a stacked record on.
Yeah.
And then thinking about what we were dealing with, we used to just deal with setbacks, whether it's 12 inches or 11, it's like, oh my God, where are the good old days? Now we have these really tricky, records that we just have to stay ahead of, or we're gonna get buried, which frankly is a good strategy on some people's part, just bury them and, they'll lose some of these.
It is, and that's what people do. And I think Robert's done a nice job, in terms of what he does in terms of his plan commission, how it does, and it's exhibit A, exhibit B, and we just need to follow that, format. I think and I think sometimes in the packets, it's even got a link, to that specific exhibit. That you can click on and just get right there. So we'll continue to work on that and try to get you guys the best information we can for you to make the best decisions you can.
Yeah, I understand the process will be off, but there's a lot going on, transitions happening, so, and it's 9:45 at night, so it's not so. Is there anything else for the good of the order?
Thanks a lot for dealing with the new place.
Yeah.
So we appreciate it. I don't know with some of the things with the voices, whether or not people have to maybe lift up their voices. I don't know, but.
I couldn't make a move without that camera shifting.
Can we talk about real quick, Mickey brought up a good point, and maybe I'm just paranoid, but this whole idea of a chain sneaking its way in, what happens if McDonald's makes an application, fulfills every code requirement, doesn't need to come before us? Do they get in? Does some lesser chain that only has a few stores here and there, do they sneak by because it doesn't have the McDonald's name that we don't recognize, and somehow there's a public outcry? I mean, what's the backstop there? Or am I just tired and not thinking of some simple backstop that we have in place?
It is furiously going through the book here.
I think it's a great question, and it's, I think, one we anticipated because this is a smaller kind of regional place with other places around here. I'm not quite sure that the convenience store falls under the Formula Foods. So that's the question, because I don't think from a staff perspective.
Let me just hold 1 second. Let's make sure we're not talking about this specific application, maybe just more broad.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I mean, so what it relates to is Formula Foods like McDonald's, like Arby's, like Burger King. And so whether it's pretty specific in terms of menus and things like that. So I'm not sure if, say, like a retail business or it's pretty. Restaurants.
So a very good example, so the language in the code specifically says formula food restaurant. And so the word restaurant, the way that we are interpreting that, means that the primary mode of sale is prepared food. And so if you have a situation such as coming from Douglas County, if you have a winery and a tasting room and they have a pizza kitchen, or a pizza oven on site, or doing a little bit of food sale on site, that does not make them a restaurant, because that food sale is an accessory service. It's not the primary function. The primary function of the winery or the tasting room was the sale of alcohol. And so the retail establishment, the primary function is primarily going to be the sale of retail goods. But if they have a hot counter, that doesn't make them a restaurant. That has them having an accessory use selling hot food.
Yeah,
But on the other, so on the other hand, we impose the food tax as a city. We impose that on all prepared food, including the Ernest Market.
well, I guess that initially is staff's take on that. We can review that matter with, legal if you'd like. But that has been the approach that Robert and I believe when it says formal food restaurant. And it says needs a restaurant required by contractual or other arrangements to offer standardized menus, ingredients, food preparation. I think that's where we believe that it differs. But that's not to say that decisions can't be made and we can, have that looked at. That is, what we're looking at this point in time.
So like a 7-Eleven could establish a store here. And,
I would say it's a convenience store.
potentially,
So yes, that's what he's saying.
yeah.
So that's saying right or wrong, but that's how we're looking at it right now.
Okay.
So you're the only, this planning department is the only person reviewing that question,
Yes,
because it's an administrative decision. And so you're saying you're applying the comprehensive plan and that's your.
the comprehensive plan says formula food. And the way I read that definition, that's how we're administering it. Always.
So if 7-Eleven makes an application, the backstop is the two of you.
That's correct.
Okay.
So let me just put this out there. We administer the zoning ordinance that we have before us. And if plan commission and council would like to choose to have different language, there is an amendment process that's available.
Anyone else on this?
I'm just looking at the definition in the comprehensive plan. And then formula food restaurants are defined as businesses required by contractual or other arrangements to offer standardized menus, ingredients, food preparation, stuff we've been talking about, but then it goes on to say interior or exterior design or uniforms, and some of those, like the interior and exterior designs, would certainly apply to the convenience store, like a 7-Eleven. And it uses or to connect those words, not like it's all inclusive. I don't know, it's confusing to me. I always thought the wine was, that the businesses could not come from out of state. Apparently that's just a rumor that I heard someplace.
Is there a percentage test, whether or not an establishment is a restaurant or a wine sales? Is it 40-60 or 70-30?
I would say that's kind of up in the air. I think that's just kind of an interpretation. I don't have anything that says specifically what a number is on that. I would say anything that's probably doing at least 50%, 51% of their business in some direction is probably the majority of the business.
51% compared to is a restaurant.
Yeah. So I guess you would take it down to what they have to say. I'm not trying to sit here and say that I'm right or anything, but that's how I'm reviewing it and how I see it. And if I'm someone higher than I, as far as an attorney or someone wants to tell me otherwise, I'm totally game for it. And like I said, as far as changing the language, that's always an option as well. And that's probably the better option,
Yeah.
take the interpretation out.
What exactly is prepared for this meeting? I'm kidding, it's too late. No, please don't answer, I was really kidding.
Stop here.
Wouldn't be the first time.
I'm
I've
just
ever
thinking
looked.
myself a hole.
What exactly do you mean by that? Okay, is there anything else that can wait to be solved another time when we have a little more time? Or isn't this late? Good meeting, everyone. Thank you. Good stuff. Good night. We're adjourned.